Chapter 1141. Looks like Gold Thug did meet with a great danger indeed and almost died last time. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so agitated, Duan Ling Tian thought to himself. However, he was delighted the moment he found out he would be meeting the two berserk mongrel rodent clans Imperials soon. This meant he would be able to deal with the matter quickly. After he had obtained the heavenly jewel, he would rush to the Yin-Yang Sex estate immediately. Let's go. Duan Ling Tian motioned to them. Gold Thug led the group and entered the deep swamp area. This was where the berserk mongrel rodent clans Imperial and Royal family were gathered. The Imperials and Royals of the berserk mongrel rodent clan could transform into humans. Due to this reason, their residence was a wooden building. Although the material it was made from was simple, it was exquisite. Third Imperial Lord. Third Imperial Lord. During their journey, the berserk mongrel rodents who saw the order token in Gold Thug's hand kneeled in front of him one by one to show their respect. Duan Ling Tian and the other two followed from behind. When they reached the center of the swamp area, Duan Ling Tian's eyes brightened. The exquisite wooden building before them was spectacular. It was as though they were transported to another world. Oh, and I was wondering who is it? As it turns out, our third Imperial Lord is back. A mocking voice resounded in the air soon after. Duan Ling Tian looked at the source of the voice. It was a middle-aged man who was walking out of the wooden building. His gaze was filled with disdain when he looked at Gold Thug. 8th level Void Transformation Stage. Originally Duan Ling Tian thought this person had to be powerful since he dared to mock Gold Thug. However, he was just an 8th level Void Transformation martial artist. Duan Ling Tian raised a brow and asked Gold Thug curiously, a berserk mongrel rodent clan's royal family member. Yes, master. Gold Thug nodded in response. He paused to look at the middle-aged man who mocked him with cold eyes. In the berserk mongrel rodent clan, he's the mongrel rodent I hate the most apart from the other two guys. Naturally, Duan Ling Tian knew who the other two guys that Gold Thug mentioned were. It was none other than the two Imperials from the berserk mongrel rodent clan's branch who had almost sent Gold Thug to meet his maker. They were his sworn enemies. Ha ha ha, Gold Thug, I can't believe submitted to someone. This is a wonderful news. I'm looking forward to the expressions the two Imperials will make when they find out about this. The middle-aged man laughed mockingly. However, his laughter came to a halt soon after. This was because a bloody hole suddenly appeared on his throat. The hole was gruesome and gory. Fresh blood kept spurting out of it. In the end, he collapsed and stopped breathing. Since you hate him so much, I'll just silence him forever, Duan Ling Tian said calmly with his right arm extended. Gold Thug's eyes narrowed immediately. Earlier, all he heard was the sound of sword whistling that disappeared as soon as it appeared. He did not even catch his master's movement, but this member of the berserk mongrel rodent clan's royal family whom he hated had dropped dead just like that. Master, your strength has grown again. Gold Thug's eyes lit up immediately. In the next instance, a wicked smile crept up on the corner of his mouth as his figure flew out as fast as the wind. With a raise of his hand, a 3-foot-long blade appeared in his hands. It was none other than his Grade 1 spirit sword. Swish, 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 with a flick of his hand, the sword in Gold Thug's hand moved like a swimming dragon. Streaks of sword light swept out, and all the wooden buildings before their eyes collapsed soon after. Apart from the collapsed wooden buildings, many figures lay in a pool of blood as well. These were almost all of the berserk mongrel rodent clan's royal family members. Gold Thug, are you crazy? Naturally, there were also some berserk mongrel rodent clan's royal family members whose cultivation base was pretty good, so they managed to escape this calamity. When they returned to their senses and looked at the person who attacked them, horror dawned on them. They were extremely familiar with the person before their eyes. It was the third brother, the sworn brother of the two Imperials. In their berserk mongrel rodent clan, other than the berserk mongrel rodents who were born with a lowly bloodline, none of the members of the honorable royal family acknowledged this person. They thought he had gone crazy when they saw how this person dared to kill the members of the royal family. Was he not scared of offending the imperial family at all? After all, the root foundation of their berserk mongrel rodent clan lay with the royal family. Only the union between the royal family members or the union between a royal and imperial family members could produce a new generation of imperial family members. However, the answer that the members of the berserk mongrel rodent clan's branch's royal family obtained was a sword that swept out as fast as lightning. Every time the sound of sword whistling appeared, it would disappear immediately. The sound of sword whistling was like a voodoo talisman. Every time it resonated, there would be one member from the berserk mongrel rodent clan's royal family who died. Boom! Many of the royal family members went into berserk mode to raise their strength. However, they were still killed with a slash of Gold Thug's sword. So this is berserk. Although Duan Ling Tian knew about the berserk ability of the berserk mongrel rodents through the rebirth martial emperor's memory, he was still surprised when he witnessed it with his own eyes. Once the berserk mongrel rodents went into berserk mode, apart from their origin energies that would fuse with the concepts on their bodies, a layer of crimson light would appear. Their strength was greatly enhanced once they entered berserk mode. However, their boost from berserk was pretty small. They only gained the strength of several hundred ancient horned dragons at most. Such an enhancement was nothing in front of Gold Thug, this demon monarch. Soon after, a bloody river formed at the center of the berserk mongrel rodent clan's estate. Gold Thug, how dare you? Gold Thug, you're looking for death. A bloody scent filled the air, and all of the berserk mongrel rodents in the swamp area became agitated the moment they smelled the bloody scent. The real masters had finally shown up. Two skinny old men, who were like bones wrapped only in skin, appeared side by side. Their eyes gleamed with a crimson light as their bodies released a blood-curdling aura. The aura was filled with wrath, killing intent, and ruthlessness. Between the two old men, one of them was wearing a black robe while the other wore a gray robe. Their eyes immediately locked on Gold Thug as soon they appeared. Whoosh, 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 comma. Meanwhile, berserk mongrel rodents from every corner of the swamp had gathered here. They were completely stunned when they saw the bodies of the royal family members that were scattered on the ground. Who did this? Soon after, they had their answer. The third Imperial Lord did this. Goodness, why did the third Imperial Lord do this? This is akin to killing the descendants of our berserk mongrel rodent clan. Doesn't he want to live? Although there were many berserk mongrel rodents watching from the side, none of them had any intention of making a move at all. They knew it would be pointless. This third Imperial Lord's strength was more or less on par with the two Imperials. He was not someone they could fight. They had not even stepped into the void transformation stage yet and did not even possess the strength to transform into humans. Ha 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 ha, you two old men finally showed up, Gold Thug laughed when he saw the gray-clad and black-clad old men. His laughter was filled with wantonness and excitement. The gray-clad old man's eyes gleamed coldly. He suppressed the wrath in his heart and asked in a deep voice, Gold Thug, why would you do this? Why? What an excellent question. The moment the gray-clad old man's words left his mouth, Gold Thug's laughter came to a halt. With a loud bellow, a dazzling gold light skyrocketed from his body, forcing all the berserk mongrel rodents on the scene to squint their eyes. When they opened their eyes, they could not help but tremble uncontrollably. Their bloody red eyes immediately turned cold. What did they just witness? A golden hound that had a black horn similar to unicorns on its head appeared before their eyes. They were not unfamiliar to this great dog. So you're actually the leftover evil from the Golden Hellhound clan. Are the three people behind you, your helpers, also the leftover evils from the Golden Hellhound clan? The black-clad man asked coldly as he narrowed his bloody eyes. There's just a few of you, you think you can do anything too, the gray-clad old man sneered. However, he stopped midway before he could finish his words. Nobody had interrupted him. He had suddenly stopped speaking on his own accord. Nobody knew when, but a purple figure suddenly appeared next to the gray-clad old man like a ghost. A purple-clad young man stood before the gray-clad old man. The 3-foot-long blade in his hand had already pierced through the gray-clad old man's throat. Swish! With a flick of the 3-foot-long blade, a slashing sound reverberated in the air as the gray-clad old man's head was severed from his body. Whoosh! The minute before the gray-clad old man stopped speaking, the black-clad old man next to him dodged to the side in the distance like a bolt of black lightning. Who are you? The black-clad old man's face turned pale, and a hint of dread could be seen in the depth of his eyes when he looked at the purple figure before him. Although his opponent's attack was pretty sneaky, the fact that he was able to approach them who were members of the imperial family and kill one of them meant that his strength was truly terrifying. The strength he possessed was stronger than theirs, or at least, stronger than theirs before they used berserk. Boom! Without any hesitation, the origin energy that was rolling off the black-clad old man's body transformed into milky white flames. As it soared up, the profundity followed suit like a shadow. On top of that, a crimson light rose from his body and enveloped his entire being, making him appear to be several inches taller. This was the berserk ability of the berserk mongrel rodent clan. He held a saber in his hand. The saber was slender and was enveloped by a light. His origin energy that had fused with his profundity merged with it easily. Whoosh! For a moment, the heaven and earth energy whirled above the sky and gathered into the heaven and earth phenomenon. The heaven and earth phenomenon finally formed the silhouettes of 3 ancient black dragons that spiraled as they descended. They looked intimidating as they caused the originally dark swamp to turn even darker. The strength of 3 ancient black dragons, how's this possible? The moment Gold Thug saw the silhouettes of 3 ancient black dragons above the black-clad old man's head, he turned pale immediately. Shock and disbelief were clearly written on his face. Chapter 1142. From what Gold Thug remembered, his strength was on par with the black-clad old man if he did not use Berserk. When Gold Thug unleashed his full power, he could mobilize the strength of 2 ancient black dragons with an additional 5,000 ancient horned dragons. His battle experience and technique were far better than that of the black-clad old man due to his activities as a pirate in the southern area of Ruo Shui River. Due to this reason, in terms of strength, he won the black-clad old man by a level. However, once the black-clad old man entered Berserk mode, he had an additional strength of 3,000 ancient horned dragons. That meant he possessed the strength of 2 ancient black dragons and 8,000 ancient horned dragons in total. The strength difference of 3,000 ancient horned dragons rendered his battle experience and technique useless. Crush. He would be completely crushed. The black-clad old man in Berserk mode could crush him completely. However, he did not expect the next time he encountered the black-clad man, his strength would have risen to such a level. After he used Berserk, his strength was 2,000 ancient horned dragons more compared to last time. The black-clad old man heard Gold Thug's exclamation and looked at him instantly before he asked in disdain, "Gold Thug, did you think I'll be stuck at the same spot as you?" After he spoke to Gold Thug, he immediately turned to look at the purple-clad young man standing nearby. His gaze was filled with a cold killing intent. "You'll die," the black-clad old man hissed as he stared at Duan Ling Tian. His voice was so cold, it was as though it came from a thaw hole. "You want me to die? Well, we'll have to see whether you're capable or not." Although the black-clad old man had 3 silhouettes of ancient black dragons above his head, Duan Ling Tian's expression remained unchanged as he looked fearlessly into the other party's eyes. "Master, I'll help you." At this moment, Gold Thug flew out and stood next to Duan Ling Tian before staring straight at the black-clad old man. He was the only Imperial left in the Berserk mongrel rodent clan's branch. Although he knew his master was strong and could mobilize the strength of 2 ancient black dragons and 8,000 ancient horned dragons when he unleashed his full power, the strength that the black-clad old man unleashed was still 2,000 ancient horned dragons more than his master. His master's sword skill was extraordinary, but he would most likely not be a match for the black-clad old man since there was a huge gap between their strength. "Mind your own business, this old fellow is no cause for concern," Duan Ling Tian told Gold Thug. His words made it clear that he could deal with the black-clad old man without Gold Thug's help. "Master," upon hearing this, Gold Thug looked at Duan Ling Tian worriedly. "Relax." Duan Ling Tian smiled nonchalantly. His eyes were filled with confidence. "All right." After taking a deep breath, Gold Thug nodded his head. He chose to believe in Duan Ling Tian. In the next instance, his body flashed as though he had transformed into a bolt of lightning and swept through the group of berserk mongrel rodents at the side. Whoosh, 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 After he had transformed into a human again, he wielded his sword. Every time he slashed with his sword, he would easily slaughter a few berserk mongrel rodents. The sword in his hand was like the Grim Reaper's scythe. In just a blink of an eye, many berserk mongrel rodents died in his hands. These berserk mongrel rodents had not even stepped into the void transformation stage. They were like ants in front of Gold Thug, who was at the 6th level Demon Monarch stage. They could not even withstand a single blow. Flee, flee, In the face of this one-sided massacre, the group of berserk mongrel rodents scattered all over the place. "Help Gold Thug." At this moment, Duan Ling Tian's voice entered Feng Tianwu and Shang Quan's ears. It was as though they had just received an order. They began to make their move. They helped Gold Thug to slaughter the berserk mongrel rodents that were fleeing all over the place. It was a one-sided massacre. The bodies of the berserk mongrel rodents dropped down as though it was pouring rain at the places the two of them passed by. Die. When the black-clad old man saw this bloody scene, his crimson eyes were filled with killing intent. He yelled loudly as he charged at Duan Ling Tian. Although he was only making his first move, he had unleashed his full power. Whoosh! A strike that contained the strength of 3 ancient black dragons rushed menacingly toward Duan Lingtian like a shadow. It was as though he was trying to kill Duan Lingtian in one blow so he could go to his clansmen rescue. Duan Lingtian smirked in disdain in the face of the black-clad old man's menacing attack. In the next moment, he flicked the 3-foot-long blade in his hand and met with the incoming attack. Boom! At this moment, a 5-colored energy skyrocketed from Duan Lingtian's body. When the 5-colored energy appeared, it transformed into the shape of a sword. It made Duan Lingtian appear like a gigantic 5-colored sword. Whoosh! Swish! A saber and a sword clashed violently. Both of them did not hold back. The strike from the black-clad old man that was enveloped with a red light contained the strength of 3 ancient black dragons. A tyrannical aura swept past the places he slashed his sword. Airwaves rolled and stirred as flurries of hurricane swept out. Saber marks could be clearly seen on the dead trees in the swamp. Although the 3-foot-long blade in Duan Lingtian's hand was unleashed after the enemy had struck, he was not at a disadvantage at all. The rolling energy from his body was continually released in waves. The energy from his body set off a series of explosions. The airwaves stirred and created a flurry of hurricanes. The wind blew on him, causing his robes to flutter. He was a vision of grace and elegance. Due to the fact that his opponent had struck first, the energy from the 3-foot-long blade was released in a haste. After it clashed with the saber in the black-clad old man's hand, it dropped to a disadvantageous position. The black-clad old man forced Duan Lingtian to take 2 steps backward with a slash. He sneered, "You're just a mantis trying to stop a chariot." After mocking Duan Lingtian, the black-clad old man continued to thrust his saber forward as he tried to smash the 3-foot-long blade in Duan Lingtian's hand and cut him in half. However, his face turned pale soon after. He discovered the energy from the 3-foot-long blade in the purple-clad young man's hand kept increasing as though there was no end to it. It kept crashing on his energy like the waves from the sea. It heavily pressured him. Boom! Finally, he felt the energy from the 3-foot-long blade in the other party's hand suddenly erupt and crush his own energy. The energy had erupted so suddenly and so speedily that he had no time to react at all. When he regained his senses, he only saw a flash before his eyes. He saw the heaven and earth phenomenon that had gathered above his opponent's head. His eyes instantly widened. It was also destined to be his last expression in life. When he saw the heaven and earth phenomenon above the purple-clad young man, a tiny line appeared in between his brows. The line continued to spread and turned bloody. Snap! The black-clad old man's body began to split into 2. Boom! Before the old man's body completely split into 2, he was enveloped by the rolling 5-colored energy and turned into dust. There were no other ways more horrible than this to die. Whoosh! A breeze swept past, and all that was left was the purple-clad young man. His face was calm and serene as his purple robe fluttered lightly in the wind. The sword in his hand had long disappeared. The purple-clad young man was none other than Duan Lingtian. He muttered under his breath, "That sword Saint Feng Qingyang really didn't lie. I just barely scraped the surface of the sword Dao he left behind, and my sword profundity has already been raised to such a level. This is extraordinary. These 2 months are just like a dream." When he reached this part of the sentence, he sighed lightly. However, there was a shadow of a smile on his face. Meanwhile, the heaven and earth phenomenon above his head began to dissipate. At this moment, one could still see the heaven and earth phenomenon above his head clearly. There were 3 silhouettes of ancient black dragons and 5,000 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons. In other words, when Duan Lingtian made his move earlier, his entire strength was equivalent to the strength of 3 ancient black dragons and 5,000 ancient horned dragons. 2 months ago, when Duan Lingtian encountered Gold Thug above the Yin-Yang sect's large swift boat, his full strength was only equivalent to the strength of 2 ancient black dragons and 8,000 ancient horned dragons. After 2 months, he had gained an additional 7,000 ancient horned dragons. This was a miracle. At this moment, Feng Tianwu, Gold Thug, and Shang Quan had completely slaughtered all the berserk mongrel rodents in their surroundings. No longer distracted by their task, they immediately looked at Duan Lingtian and were all attracted by the heaven and earth phenomenon above his head that was about to dissipate. Gulp, gulp, Gold Thug and Shang Quan gulped in unison. Shock and disbelief filled their faces and their eyes. In just 2 months, he managed to gain the strength of 7,000 ancient horned dragons. How did Master do that? Gold Thug was baffled. His mouth was wide opened. Shang Quan was in a similar state. Why young Master only needs 2 months to raise his strength to such a level? It's an additional 7,000 ancient horned dragons. Although Feng Tianwu remained silent, there was a hint of bewilderment in the depth of her eyes. Duan Lingtian's progress took everyone by surprise since they knew what his strength was like previously. 2 weeks ago, the rebirth pill's medicinal efficacy catalyzed my cultivation base and broke through to the 3rd level martial monarch stage in one fell swoop. The elevation added the strength of 1,000 ancient horned dragons to my origin energy. Along with the boost from the quasi-royal grade spirit sword, it's an increase of 2,000 ancient horned dragons. Duan Lingtian felt like he was dreaming when he recalled the elevation of his strength 2 weeks ago. Before he made a breakthrough to the martial monarch stage, the rebirth pill's medicinal efficacy still needed the spirit fruit's medicinal efficacy to help catalyze it, even though its strength was terrifying. However, he did not need anything to catalyze it now. It only took me 2 months to break through to the 3rd level from the 1st level martial monarch stage. Duan Lingtian did not know what to say about the progress that he had made within this 6 months. Whether it was Tianwu or Shang Quan, everyone was still at the 1st level martial monarch stage. They were not able to make any breakthrough at all. Chapter 1143-1144 Heavenly Jewel obtained. Feng Tianwu and Shang Quan's situation was a perfect example of how the progress in the martial monarch stage should be. They progressed one step at a time. One step at a time. This meant that every step was extremely slow and difficult. However, this was not the case for Duan Lingtian, who had consumed the rebirth pill. His progress after breaking through to the martial monarch stage was as simple and easy as drinking water. This could be seen by the way he progressed from the 1st level to the 3rd level martial monarch stage in just 2 months. This is all thanks to the rebirth pill. Duan Lingtian knew this very well. Although his innate ability was high and had reached the limit that any human martial artists could reach on Cloud Continent, his progress would not have been so fast if not for the help from the rebirth pill's medicinal efficacy. Naturally, just the elevation of his cultivation base was not enough to grant him the additional strength of 7,000 ancient horned dragons in just 2 months. The elevation of his cultivation base only granted him an additional strength of 2,000 ancient horned dragons. The remaining strength of 5,000 ancient horned dragons came from other aspects of his power. The 4 aspects of his power were his origin energy, quasi-royal grade spirit sword, fused profundity, and sword profundity. The progress of his origin energy and the boost from the quasi-royal grade spirit sword granted him the strength of 2,000 ancient horned dragons. His fused profundity did not have any progress. Only the sword profundity was left. It was exactly the breakthrough Duan Lingtian made in the sword profundity that granted him the strength of 5,000 ancient horned dragons. 2 months ago, Duan Lingtian had only comprehended the 1st level monarch stage sword profundity that gave him the strength of 2,000 ancient horned dragons. However, Duan Lingtian's sword profundity currently gave him the strength of 5,000 ancient horned dragons. In other words, the sword profundity Duan Lingtian comprehended currently had the strength of 7,000 ancient horned dragons. The sword profundity with the strength of 7,000 ancient horned dragons was at the 6th level monarch stage sword profundity. Exactly, Duan Lingtian had comprehended the 6th level monarch stage sword profundity. From the 1st to the 6th level monarch stage sword profundity, he had advanced 5 whole levels. My sword profundity's progress is actually this huge. During the entire process, I did not rely on any sword profundity fragment to comprehend and raise my sword profundity at all. I only relied on the sword Tao that I've memorized. As for the origin of the sword Tao, it was none other than the word, sword, that the sword Saint Qing Fengyang left behind. An obscure message was contained in the word, sword. This message was none other than the sword Tao left behind by the sword Saint Feng Qingyang. According to sword Saint Feng Qingyang, if I comprehend half of the sword Tao he left behind, I'll be able to roam the Tao martial saint land freely. I've only barely scraped the surface, and my sword profundity has already been elevated to such an extent, Duan Lingtian muttered. When he reached the end of his sentence, his eyes lit up right away. It appears the strength that's needed for me to roam the Tao martial saint land freely is much more than what I imagined. At this moment, Duan Lingtian felt that these 4 words, Tao martial saint land, were as heavy as a mountain, and it was pressing down on him so hard he could barely breathe. Why am I worrying about it so much? Currently, I've not even reached the martial emperor stage yet. The moment he thought of this, he shook his head and sneered at himself. When all was said and done, the reason he made such a huge progress in his strength was all thanks to the knowledge left behind by sword Saint Feng Qingyang. He honestly felt thankful toward that guy who called himself the sword saint. Heavenly Jewel. The moment Duan Ling Tian returned to his senses, his eyes lit up. He finally remembered his purpose of coming here. He immediately took the spatial rings from the two Imperials of the Berserk Mongrel Rodent clan. After performing the blood ownership claim, he began to look in the spatial rings. However, he did not find the Heavenly Jewel at all. Master, are you looking for the Heavenly Jewel? Gold Thug saw Duan Ling Tian's movement and noticed his frown. He immediately guessed what Duan Ling Tian was thinking. They didn't bring it with them, Duan Ling Tian said. It must be in their ancestral shrine, Gold Thug replied. Ancestral shrine? Duan Ling Tian was stunned. They were a group of demon beasts, they actually had an ancestral shrine. In Duan Ling Tian's opinion, the ancestral shrine was a human tradition to worship and cherish the memory of their family's ancestors. It usually held some significance. It did not cross his mind that the Berserk Mongrel Rodent clan would have an ancestral shrine as well. Soon after, under Gold Thug's guidance, Duan Ling Tian arrived at the Berserk Mongrel Rodent clan's ancestral shrine. The ancestral shrine was also completely made out of wood, but it was extremely exquisite. There were many memorial tablets placed on top of it. Each of them was carved with names that were unfamiliar to Duan Ling Tian. However, Gold Thug was familiar with them. Bam! Gold Thug raised his hand and smashed a memorial tablet on the far right. His face was cold, and killing intent gleamed in his eyes as though he was about to devour someone. He's the Berserk Mongrel Rodent that killed your parents? Duan Ling Tian asked. Yes. After taking a deep breath to calm himself down, Gold Thug looked at Duan Ling Tian and apologized. I'm sorry for losing my cool, master. This is not an issue. Duan Ling Tian shook his head. If I were you, I would have torn down the ancestral shrine of the Berserk Mongrel Rodent clan instead. When Duan Ling Tian reached this part of his sentence, he saw Gold Thug's eyes lit up. It was as though Duan Ling Tian's words had lit up a light bulb in his head. If you want to tear it down, at least wait until I get my hands on the Heavenly Jewel first. Duan Ling Tian was really worried this guy would immediately smash the ancestral shrine of the Berserk Mongrel Rodent clan. Yes, master, Gold Thug hastily replied. After that, Duan Ling Tian and the other three began to search the ancestral shrine of the Berserk Mongrel Rodent clan. After half a day, they still could not find anything. What's going on? Gold Thug frowned. Previously, I heard the two old men mention that the Heavenly Jewel is always kept inside their ancestral shrine. Why can't we find it? Take a closer look at your surroundings and those memorial tablets as well, maybe there's some hidden storage or something, Duan Ling Tian reminded. After Duan Ling Tian's reminder, the four of them began to search for another 30 minutes before they made a discovery. Young master, look over here. Shang Quan's words caught Duan Ling Tian's attention. When he arrived next to Shang Quan, he looked over in the direction Shang Quan pointed and immediately saw a loose wooden plank at one of the corners of the ancestral shrine. It seemed to have been tampered with before. Without any hesitation, Duan Ling Tian took the wooden plank down. Clang! After the removal of the wooden plank, they instantly saw a spatial ring. Moreover, nobody had performed the blood ownership claim on it before. Could the Heavenly Jewel be in there? When Duan Ling Tian thought of this, his breathing quickened. He felt the hand that was holding on to the spatial ring turn as heavy as a mountain. After Duan Ling Tian took a deep breath to calm himself down, he began to perform the blood ownership claim on the spatial ring under the watchful eyes of Shang Quan and the others. Duan Ling Tian instantly looked inside the spatial ring after he performed the blood ownership claim. It was completely empty inside the spatial ring except for an eye-catching jewel in the corner. The jewel gleamed with 5 different colors. These 5 colors were green, red, blue, khaki, and purple. They were the colors of the 5 nature energies that corresponded with wind, fire, water, earth, and thunder respectively. The inside of the jewel shone with 5 different colors. It looked almost identical to Duan Ling Tian's fused profundity that also had 5 different colors. Heavenly Jewel. Duan Ling Tian was almost 100% certain it was the Heavenly Jewel even without browsing through the Rebirth Martial Emperor's memory. The purest nature energy was stored inside the jewel. This was the Heavenly Jewel. For a moment, Duan Ling Tian's face was overcome with delight. Even his body trembled slightly from the excitement. Without any hesitation, Duan Ling Tian took the Heavenly Jewel out and held it in his trembling hand. He finally obtained the Heavenly Jewel. It was ice cold. Soon after, a startled expression appeared on Duan Ling Tian's face when he noticed the energy that was transmitted by the Heavenly Jewel. It was fierce, furious, mild, heavy, and tyrannical. 5 different energies rushed into his body. He had to mobilize his fused profundity to let both of them meet. Just as I expected. Soon after, Duan Ling Tian discovered the moment the fused profundity encountered the heavenly jewel energy that the heavenly jewel released, both of them merged perfectly like milk and water. Everything felt very natural. This, Duan Ling Tian's eyes suddenly narrowed. At this moment, he could faintly feel that his fused profundity had a slight transformation as though it had made some progress. Although the progress was small and far from making a breakthrough, Duan Ling Tian could feel it clearly. This small progress feels more than the progress I made trying to comprehend it in the past 2 months using the 3 nature profundity fragments. Duan Ling Tian was secretly shocked. He felt that all the effort he had used to comprehend the 3 nature profundity fragments in the past 2 months too was a waste. As expected of the heavenly jewel, perhaps, it'll facilitate a breakthrough in my fused profundity by the time I arrive at the yin-yang sex estate. At that time, my strength would be raised to another level again. Duan Ling Tian was dreaming again. Naturally, it might not remain a dream. Judging by the heavenly jewel energy that the heavenly jewel released, it was not impossible for him to raise the level of his fused profundity in a short period of time. Naturally, they would have to wait for a while before they could see any result. This is the heavenly jewel. Feng Tianwu and Shang Quan had both recovered from their shock of seeing Duan Ling Tian's current strength. Both of them currently had their attention on the heavenly jewel in Duan Ling Tian's hand. Even Gold Thug's attention was caught by the heavenly jewel in Duan Ling Tian's hand. Although he had heard about the heavenly jewel in the past, it was all just hearsay. This was his first time seeing the heavenly jewel. Moreover, it was just an arm's length away from him. Naturally, he did not dare to touch it at all. He did not want his master to misunderstand him. Chapter 1144. Boom, 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 comma. A series of loud explosions resonated in the air. A majestic wooden building collapsed, sending dust flying everywhere. 3 people were waiting outside in the distance. A figure holding a 3-foot-long blade stood before the collapsed building. Waves and waves of tyrannical aura exuded from the figure. The collapsed building was his artwork. Everything's over now. After a long time, the man holding the 3-foot-long sword heaved a sigh of relief. His ancient voice sounded free now. Father, mother, my clansmen, I, Gold Thug, have avenged all of you. He retracted the 3-foot-long blade. He kneeled in the sky before he bowed 3 times in the northwest direction and stood up. The man was dressed in a golden robe. He looked majestic and awe-inspiring. He was none other than Gold Thug. The building he destroyed housed the Berserk Mongrel Rodent clan's ancestral shrine. In the next instance, Gold Thug pricked his finger and made an inviolable oath. I, Gold Thug, swear with the 9 heavenly tribulation that from now on, I'll follow my master, Duan Ling Tian, with all my heart. If I have any impure intention, I'll be struck to death by lightning and die a horrible death. Now that he had obtained his heart's desire, it was time to carry out his promise. Bam, 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 comma. 9 claps of thunder resonated in the sky in correspondence to Gold Thug's oath. The moment this oath was made, he no longer lived for himself. The lightning did not strike. Looks like Gold Thug is going to sincerely follow young master now. After a while, Shang Quan did not see any signs of a lightning strike. He immediately looked at Duan Ling Tian. Congratulations on getting a brave general, young master. Duan Ling Tian nodded his head lightly. His expression did not change much, but his eyes were gleaming brightly. Let's go. We still need to rush to the yin-yang sect. Soon after, Duan Ling Tian motioned to Gold Thug. With a wave of his hand, a wave of rolling energy swept out and quickly enveloped Feng Tianwu, Shang Quan, and Gold Thug. With his energy alone, he brought the 3 of them flying toward their destination, the yin-yang sect. Ka, little fair, I'm coming. Duan Ling Tian's gaze was piercing when he looked in the direction where the yin-yang sex estate was located. Although Duan Ling Tian flew with Feng Tianwu and the other 2 in tow, he could still use the 9th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique, the Divine Dragon form, and cultivate. His cultivation speed was not slow at all. Apart from this, he was also holding a jewel that was gleaming with 5 colors in his hand. It was the heavenly jewel. At this moment, he was constantly absorbing the heavenly jewel energy and raising the fused profundity that was formed from the fusion of 5 monarch stage nature profundities at an extremely fast speed. Moreover, Duan Ling Tian did not forget about the sword Dao contained in the word sword, as he continued to comprehend it with all his might. He had already reaped the result of his labor. Just in the span of 2 months, his first-level monarch stage sword profundity was raised to the 6th level in one fell swoop with the help from the sword Dao contained in the word, sword, that was left behind by Sword Saint Feng Qingyang. In just 2 months, he had passed 5 whole levels. If this story spread out, nobody would believe him because it was just too absurd. Duan Lingtian knew if he heard about someone raising his monarch stage profundity by 5 levels in just 2 months, he would not believe it as well. However, since this happened to him, there was no way he could not believe it. His strength had really undergone an earth-shattering transformation in these 2 months. With my current strength, I have no need to fear even if I encounter an ordinary 7th-level martial monarch powerhouse in the Yin-Yang sect. However, I'm afraid I'm still not a match for the peak master of Yang Peak. Duan Lingtian's face turned grave the moment he thought of this. The peak master of Yang Peak was someone who stood at the peak of a first-rate force. It was unlikely he could compare to someone like that now. What's he worried about? Why is he so eager to go to the Yin-Yang sect? Feng Tianwu noticed that Duan Lingtian's expression had turned grave. Her heart jolted, and her autumn eyes were filled with confusion. Whoosh, 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 4 figures soared through the sky and made their way to the Yin-Yang sect. Yang Peak in the Yin-Yang sect. There was a vast stone platform on the mountainside close to the peak. A chain of building complex stood on the stone platform and was concealed behind mist. It was not easily seen from the outside. When the mist dissipated, only the outlines of the building complex could be seen. They were all mansions that stood alone in a neat arrangement. The arrangement seemed quite comfortable to the eyes. Whoosh, whoosh, suddenly, 2 figures flying in the sky descended near the building complex. The one in the lead was a graceful woman dressed in white. The woman was incomparably beautiful with a touch innocence. It seemed as though the innocence could not be touched by the flow of time. However, the white-clad young girl's expression did not look too good at the moment. Her face was gloomy and filled with anxiety. Junior sister Ka, I'll treat you well after you marry me. The person trailing behind the white-clad young woman was a young man who wore a white robe embroidered with red flames. The young man was around 35 years old. His brows showed hints of frivolity. It was obvious he was a good-for-nothing rich kid. At this moment, he was brazenly chasing after the white-clad woman. In just a short period of time, he was only a foot away from the white-clad woman. Whoosh! The white-clad woman suddenly raised her hand and a 3-foot-long blade that emitted a tyrannical aura appeared in her hand. Get away from me, otherwise, I'll kill you even if you're the son of the peak master of Yang Peak. At the same time, waves of sword intent rose up from the white-clad woman. The heaven and earth energy whirled above the sky and finally gathered into the heaven and earth phenomenon. Several thousands of ancient horned dragons' silhouettes spiraled as they descended in a lively manner. The young man's face turned grave. For a moment, he did not dare to get close to the white-clad woman. He knew she was far stronger than he was. It would not be difficult for her to kill him. The young man's eyes gleamed coldly as he thought to himself, "You bitch. After you marry me, I want to see how you're going to remain chaste." He was not really worried the white-clad woman before him would attack him. He got a tight grasp on her weakness after all. Her weakness was his trump card, and he had used it to force her to marry him. You'll be my woman in another month's time. At that time, I'll have you writhing under me. Unless you want your best friend, Li Fei, to die. The young man looked at the white-clad woman and his eyes gleamed lustily. He was extremely pleased with himself. Soon after, the white-clad woman landed before a mansion, and unsurprisingly, she was stopped by an old man. Scram! The white-clad woman's eyes narrowed as she shouted. Her tone was filled with wrath. However, the old man ignored her. Instead, he bowed respectfully to the young man following her. His tone was very humble as he called out, "Young master." "Bring her to see Li Fei," the young man told the old man and nodded his head nonchalantly. "Yes," the old man replied respectfully. Although he was a Yin-Yang sect's elder at the 3rd-level martial monarch stage, he did not dare to be negligent in front of this young man. This was because the young man before him was the son of the peak master of Yang Peak. The peak master of Yang Peak had saved his life a few times before, he was his savior. If the peak master of Yang Peak wanted to betray and leave the Yin-Yang sect, he would gladly follow him without any hesitation. In his heart, he had already regarded himself as the attendant of the peak master of Yang Peak. The old man brought the white-clad woman into the mansion. The young man stood outside the mansion. He was not worried the white-clad woman would escape. He believed in the old man's strength. Moreover, apart from the old man, his father had also sent another 2 powerhouses who were hiding at the sides of the mansion. Due to this reason, he felt very at ease about this matter. Humph, she actually has a fiancé already, moreover, she and Li Fei are sharing the same man. When she becomes my woman, I must think of a way to make her disclose that man's background, the young man muttered under his breath after he snorted. If that guy is not dead, he'll remain a thorn in my heart. If he dies, the thorn will vanish as well. When he reached the end of his sentence, an icy killing intent gleamed in his eyes as though he was about to devour someone. In the mansion, the old man brought the white-clad woman to the front courtyard. The front courtyard was a huge garden filled with all kinds of plants and flowers. There was a pavilion in the center. Inside the pavilion, another white-clad woman sat cross-legged. It seemed as though her aura had merged with her surroundings. This white-clad woman also possessed the kind of beauty that could topple a nation. However, compared to the innocence of a beautiful daughter from a humble family that the white-clad woman who had just arrived possessed, her face was sexy and filled with an alluring charm. It was enough to make any man fall for her. Sister Fair, the white-clad woman called out softly as she stood outside of the pavilion. The white-clad woman inside the pavilion opened her eyes. Her seductive eyes brightened, and her face was filled with shock and excitement. Younger sister Ka. In the next instance, both of the white-clad women moved toward each other like 2 white butterflies. They held onto each other's hands and studied each other carefully. The white-clad woman whose face was filled with a seductive charm remarked with a pang in her heart, "Younger sister Ka, you've become thin. Sister Fair, you've also become thin." Ka did not know when, but 2 streaks of tears were already streaming down her naive and delicate face when she saw the white-clad woman before her. The pitiful expression on her face was enough to make one's heart ache. Younger sister Ka, don't cry, if that scoundrel knows you're like this now, his heart would ache for you, you know, Li Fei comforted her in a soft voice. Still, her autumn eyes were also brimming with tears the more she spoke. Sister Fair, I also miss young master, I wonder how's he doing now? Is he still in the 7-star sword sect? Ka's voice was racked by sobs. A purple figure with a graceful bearing appeared in her mind. It did not vanish for a long time. Younger sister Ka, there's only a month left now. If senior sister is still unable to reach out to peak master and master, I mean, if, are you prepared? Li Fei asked as her eyes glimmered with tears. Sister Fair, there's nothing to prepare, I rather die than betray young master. Ka resolutely announced. Chapter 1145, I'll accompany you. Li Fei smiled. However, there was a trace of sadness in her smile. Her biggest regret was not being able to see that scoundrel who always tortured her in her dreams at least once before her death. However, when she recalled the beautiful time she had spent with that scoundrel previously, she no longer had any regrets. Li Fei absent-mindedly recalled the past again. She first encountered that scoundrel at the Li family in Aurora City. That scoundrel brazenly studied her from top to bottom and gave her a horrible first impression. However, the more she got to know that scoundrel, the more she discovered he was not as intolerable in her eyes compared to before. Unknowingly, that scoundrel began to fill her heart until it could no longer be erased. Right now, the thing I regret the most is not being determined enough to leave with Peak Master Qin Shang at that time. Otherwise, I wouldn't be separated from that scoundrel for so many years and end up in this life or death situation. Li Fei sighed softly before looking at Ka and said apologetically, Younger sister Ka, I'm sorry I made the wrong decision. Sister Fair, please don't say things like that, you're not wrong. At that time, you chose to stay behind because you thought you'd be able to get better cultivation resources here in the Yin-Yang sect so that you could quickly raise your strength to help young master. Ka shook her head and continued to say, I don't regret staying back with you, this is something I must do for young master. It's just such a pity that it's still useless even if we've already broken through to the martial monarch stage, we're still just a piece of meat on someone's chopping board, being trampled on at someone's will. Her voice was filled with a sense of helplessness that rose from the bottom of her heart. Younger sister Ka, thank you for all your effort in these few months, Li Fei said. Her heart ached. If wasn't for senior sister who asked me to wait, I would have ended this disgraceful life. I'm the one that involved you in all these troubles, Ka replied, her voice trembling from her tears. Silly girl, there's no such thing as trouble between you and me, I hate myself for being too weak to help you. Li Fei shook her head. Li Fei and Ka were still conversing distressedly when the old man who stood in the distance watching over them suddenly turned grave. He looked at the sky and roared, "Who's that?" Whoosh! The old man's roar was accompanied by the ear-piercing sound of wind whistling that was charging toward him. In just a blink of an eye, a white figure descended at the front courtyard of the huge mansion. The white figure landed, revealing her identity. It was a white-clad woman with a delicately carved face. Her beauty was comparable to Ka and Li Fei. However, unlike both of them, this white-clad woman's face was cold. She emitted an icy aura that was unfriendly and unapproachable. Senior sister. Ka and Li Fei were initially shocked by the old man's roar. However, their eyes lit up when they saw the white-clad woman descending from the sky. This senior sister was their elder senior sister who shared the same master as them. Her name was Yang Shui. Apart from their master, they were only close to this senior sister Shui in the Yin-Yang sect. They were as close as real sisters. Originally, when they were threatened by the peak master of Yang Peak, they wanted to end their lives. However, they were stopped by senior sister Shui in the end. She gave them her words that she would find the peak master of Yin Peak, who swore he would not come out of his closed-door cultivation if he did not make any breakthrough to rescue them. Due to this reason, they decided not to end their disgraceful lives. At this moment, they were surprised by the appearance of their senior sister Shui. Could it be that senior sister had found their master, the peak master of Yin Peak? However, when they looked at the sky, they could not see a second figure at all. Ka and Li Fei were still stunned when Yang Shui looked at them and shouted, "Let's go." Whoosh, whoosh. Ka and Li Fei trusted senior sister Shui unconditionally. They did not ask any question, and they immediately flew to stand behind her before soaring up into the sky. Whoosh. Yang Shui followed suit and soared up into the sky with them. Yang Shui had made quite an entrance when she came. She had alerted the son of the peak master of Yang Peak who was guarding outside the mansion. Without further delay, he flew inside and witnessed the scene of them leaving. He was in a frenzy as he bellowed, "Yang Shui! How dare you touch my thing? Stop them!" Yes. After he shouted, the old man who had brought Ka in flew out like a cannonball and chased after Yang Shui, Ka, and Li Fei. "Stop!" The old man shouted and made his move when he saw he was getting close to the three women. At the moment when the old man was about to make his move, another two figures pounced out from the sides of the mansion. Similar to the old man, their targets were the three women. It was obvious they were on the same side. The three of them began to attack Yang Shui, Ka, and Li Fei who were trying to escape. Humph! A cold snort could be heard in the air. It was accompanied by gigantic palms that slammed down from the sky as though it was raining palms. It was Yang Shui who had snorted. Her white dress fluttered noisily as a pair of spirit weapon gloves appeared on the fair hands below the sleeves of her dress. She launched a thunderous attack toward their three pursuers. Heaven-encompassing palm. This martial skill was the infamous heaven-ranked advanced offensive martial skill in Yin Peak. It was also the strongest palm-based martial skill in the Yin-Yang sect. The attack Yang Shui unleashed was accompanied by an unparalleled power. Boom, 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 comma. Palms that covered the sky and earth slammed down and caused the three pursuers to appear slightly wretched. The three of them took out their spirit weapons and cast all of their techniques before they could finally strike back with difficulty at the palms that were attacking them from the sky. Soon after, three pairs of eyes gleamed coldly and locked on Yang Shui. The strongest person among the younger generation in Yin Peak, today, I want to see how strong you are. The old man bellowed. He was the first person to launch an attack on Yang Shui. Yin Peak's people, how dare you act so recklessly in our Yang Peak? You'll die. The other two men whose strength was on par with the old man also charged toward Yang Shui. Be careful, senior sister. Upon seeing this, Ka and Li Fei's face turned grave. They immediately took out their spirit weapons from their spatial rings, trying to help Yang Shui to fight their three pursuers. You two go ahead, I can deal with them. Yang Shui immediately yelled to stop Ka and Li Fei. The moment the words left her mouth, she began to make her move again. Her white dress fluttered in the wind as she charged toward the three men who were rushing at her. Those three were third-level martial monarch stage martial artists. The three third-level martial monarchs were more or less on par with each other in terms of strength. They had comprehended one third-level monarch stage profundity and two ninth-level void transformation concepts. All of them wielded grade 2 spirit weapons. When the three of them attacked, each of them mobilized the heaven and earth energy and gathered one silhouette of an ancient black dragon and over 3,000 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons. These dragons looked imposing as they charged out. The two women, Ka and Li Fei, did not leave even after Yang Shui yelled at them. Everything that happened today was because of them. If something happened to their senior sister because of this, they would regret this forever and would not be able to live in peace. Senior sister, they shouted hastily. Horror dawned on their faces when they saw the 3 third-level monarch stage martial artists unleashed their full power against Yang Shui. Based on what they knew, their senior sister was only at the 3rd-level martial monarch stage. The profundity and concepts she had comprehended were not much stronger than these people. In their opinion, the odds were against their senior sister when faced with those 3 who had joined forces. The 2 women did not dare to waste any more time. They quickly charged out, trying to block the 3 men who had joined forces to kill their senior sister. Even if they could only block one of them, at least they were sharing their senior sister's burden. At this moment, they spared no thought for their own safety. There was only one thought in their minds. Nothing can happen to senior sister. However, their figures quickly came to a halt in midair. An expression of disbelief appeared on their extremely beautiful and delicate faces before it was replaced with surprise. Yang Shui had fearlessly rushed toward the 3 third-level martial monarchs who had joined forces. Boom! With a raise of her hand, Yang Shui's palm fell. A vast energy skyrocketed before it turned into palms that gathered into a small mountain. Meanwhile, the heaven and earth phenomenon above her head had an additional 4,000 silhouettes of ancient horned dragons. It looked lively as they spiraled and descended in an overbearing manner. Senior sister had a breakthrough. Ka and Li Fei's delicate faces were filled with excitement. It was as though they could finally see a sliver of hope in escaping. The strength of 1 ancient black dragon and 7,000 ancient horned dragons spread out without any reservation and transformed into a gigantic palm before it slammed down at the 3 men. Horror immediately dawned on the 3 men who were charging toward Yang Shui. Panic-stricken, they gasped. Shit, she was concealing her strength earlier. Damn it, flee, they all had the same thought in their minds. However, before they could even do what their minds told them to, the gigantic palm had already landed on them. The strength of 1 ancient black dragon and 7,000 ancient horned dragons enveloped them completely. Boom! In just a blink of an eye, the 3 people who were originally charging at Yang Shui furiously turned into dust, disappearing from this world. Yang Shui, how dare you kill my father's men? At this moment, the son of the Peak Master of Yang Peak, that good-for-nothing kid, had also flown up into the sky. The moment he saw how Yang Shui killed the 3 men, his face turned extremely pale. However, Yang Shui did not bother with him at all. She turned to look at Ka and Li Fei instead. Whoosh! Whoosh! At the same time, 2 waves of gentle energy came out of her raised hands and enveloped Ka and Li Fei. Just as she was about to bring the 2 of them away with her. Yang Shui, how dare you? A thunderous shout resonated in the sky. It gave off a powerful pressure. The moment Yang Shui heard this voice, horror dawned on her immediately. Even Ka and Li Fei turned pale immediately. Father, as for that good-for-nothing kid, his eyes had brightened up. Now that his savior was here, he was visibly excited. There was only one person he would call father. It was Yang Hong, the Peak Master of Yang Peak. Chapter 1146. Chapter 1147 Innate Ability. Whoosh! Like a gust of wind, a strong man in a fiery red robe blocked Yang Shui and the other 2's path. The strong man had a full beard and long gray hair that fluttered in the wind. Light gray flames rose and danced continuously on his body. He had thick eyebrows. A hint of nobility could be seen between his brows. There was no need for him to intentionally show his nobility. The eyes below the thick eyebrows were calmly staring at the 3 ladies. It was as though they were nothing in his eyes. Father. At this moment, that good-for-nothing kid who was following Ka went to the strong man. The strong man was none other than the Peak Master of Yang Peak, Yang Hong. Fair. Affection could be seen in Yang Hong's eyes when he looked at that young man. The young man, Yang Fei, was his only son. Father, I want to marry her today. Yang Fei looked at Ka lecherously as he pointed at her. I don't want to wait any longer. Don't worry, Yang Hong smiled affectionately. I'll let her marry you today, however, you must not disappoint me. Give me a grandchild soon. Yes. Yang Fei nodded excitedly after getting Yang Hong's consent. Meanwhile, Ka's bright eyes gleamed coldly after she heard the father and son's conversation. She said determinedly, I'd rather die than betray my young master. Give up that thought. I'll have my father kill Li Fei if you refuse to marry me. Yang Fei grinned. He looked at Li Fei smugly as though he had already won. Li Fei's beautiful face turned somber as killing intent shone in her eyes. It was as though she wanted to cut Yang Fei into pieces. She ignored Yang Fei. Inwardly, she had already made up her mind. She would rather die than let others use her to threaten Sister Ka. Peak Master Yang Hong. Yang Shui spoke at this moment. Her face turned colder as she enunciated each word carefully with her deep voice. Aren't you afraid that my master and the Peak Master of Yin Peak will look for you once they come out, since you dare to threaten our Yin Peak's disciples? Ha ha ha, Yang Hong laughed uproariously as soon as Yang Shui was done speaking. There was a hint of gloating in his laughter. Are you talking about your master and the Peak Master of Yin Peak? Do you really think they didn't hear you when you went to the forbidden area to find them? So naive. Yang Hong glared at Yang Shui in disdain. I visited them at the Yin Peak's forbidden area on the second day of their closed-door cultivation. I must say, their abilities aren't bad. Although they were badly injured, they managed to withstand 30 hits from me when they fought together. Before your master died, she kneeled and begged me to let the three of you go. Now that I remember, it's pretty sad. Tisk tisk, Yang Hong mocked them with a smile on his face. Master. When Yang Shui, Ka, and Li Fei heard Yang Hong's words, their expressions changed drastically. Tears streamed down their faces as they cried. Their master was dead. She was killed by Yang Hong. Their master was still worried about them even at the moment before her death. At this moment, their hearts ached. They remembered vividly all those times they spent with their master. Li Fei's eyes were red as she stared at Yang Hong vengefully. She asked coldly, "Why did you do that?" At this moment, Yang Shui and Ka were also looking at Yang Hong vengefully. Why did I do that? Yang Hong's smile widened. Good question. Yang Peak and Yin Peak have coexisted for thousands of years in the Yin-Yang sect. However, for the past hundreds of years, there's no mention of the sect leader when outsiders talk about the Yin-Yang sect. They would only talk about the Peak Master of Yin Peak and Yang Peak. This is because we don't have a sect leader for the past hundreds of years. However, it's different now. With the death of the Peak Master of Yin Peak, I no longer have to share the spotlight with anyone. I'll be the first sect leader in Yin-Yang sect in hundreds of years. Yang Hong said. There was delight on his face and a hint of insanity in his eyes. Ka, Fair, I'll perform Ice Seal on Yang Hong when he's unaware. Run as fast as you can. Leave Yang Peak and find a place to hide before he breaks free from the Ice Seal, Yang Shui said to Ka and Li Fei through voice transmission. She looked solemn as though she had already made up her mind. Ice Seal. Senior sister, if we leave, you're leaving with us. Senior sister, we won't leave you here on your own. Ka and Li Fei's expressions changed when they heard Yang Shui's words through voice transmission. Naturally, they knew about the Ice Seal that their senior sister mentioned. It was the innate ability Yang Shui possessed as a variant. It could freeze an area to restrain everyone within the area for a short period of time. However, if she wanted to restrain a powerhouse like Yang Hong, she would need to drain her life energy to maintain the Ice Seal. In other words, their senior sister planned to sacrifice herself to pave a way for their future. Yang Hong and his son saw Ka and Li Fei's faces change. However, they did not put much thought into it since they assumed the two women were afraid. Ka, Fair, listen to me, if both of you don't leave now, all of us will die here today. If that happens, there'll be nobody left to avenge our master, Yang Shui said sternly through voice transmission. Take care of yourselves after you leave. With your talent, as long as both of you stay alive, you'll be able to avenge me and master in the future. Ka and Li Fei fell silent after they heard Yang Shui's words through voice transmission. It was the first time their senior sister spoke so sternly to them. They understood her intention. Even if they did not want to live for themselves, they had to live for their master and senior sister. At this moment, Ka and Li Fei looked at each other. They could see the sorrow and determination in each other's bright eyes. Go! A cold command suddenly resounded in the air. It sounded thunderous in Ka and Li Fei's ears. Ka and Li Fei, who were both prepared, suddenly flew away. They were like two bolts of lightning as they headed in the opposite direction of Yang Peak. As long as they could leave Yang Peak, they would be able to enter the mountain that had a complicated terrain. Their chances of survival were high if they could make it into the mountain. Meanwhile, the Peak Master of Yang Peak, who was startled by Yang Shui's shout, turned somber. He looked at the two silhouettes who were running away at this moment. Father, get them, Yang Fei urged when he regained his senses. However, when Yang Hong was about to chase after Ka and Li Fei, he noticed a wave of extremely cold aura sweeping toward him and his son before it enveloped them. All of a sudden, the air around them seemed to have turned to ice. He could feel the cold piercing his body as though it was attempting to freeze him and turn him into an ice sculpture. Fair. The cold was insignificant to Yang Hong. It was so insignificant to the point that he got rid of the cold that had pierced his son's body with just a raise of his arm. Yang Shui, I didn't expect you to hide your ability this well. You've comprehended the ice profundity. Yang Hong stared at Yang Shui as he brought his son along with him. He was about to kill Yang Shui so he could chase after the two ladies who escaped. However, his expression changed soon after. He noticed that the air was turning colder and colder. In just a blink of an eye, a layer of hard ice formed and trapped him and his son within it. Bang! He attacked in a frenzy, but his attack only left an insignificant crack on the hard ice. Pooh! Soon after, he saw a change in Yang Shui's expression before she spat out a mouthful of blood when he attacked the hard ice. Yang Shui continued to hover in the air. There was a determined expression on her pale face. Although her body was trembling, she seemed to be still holding on. At this moment, Yang Shui's silky black hair began to turn white. At this rate, her black hair would turn completely white in no time at all. Yang Fei's expression changed as he watched the two silhouettes escaping in the opposite direction of Yang Peak. They were going to disappear from his sight soon. He panicked and urged his father, "Father! Quick, they're getting away. She's draining her life energy. This isn't ice profundity, this is an innate ability." Soon after, Yang Hong regained his senses, and his expression changed. This Yang Shui's really a variant. He had heard rumors about Yang Shui being a variant in the past, but he could not confirm if it was the truth since he had never seen her using her innate ability. He finally witnessed Yang Shui's innate ability today. Moreover, it was the type of innate ability that drained her life energy. A fiery red saber appeared in his hand out of thin air. As a saber ray rose from the saber, he tried his very best to break open the thick and hard ice around them. He wanted to break the ice so he could chase after the two ladies. Whoosh! The saber ray ran rampant on the saber in his hand. It seemed as though he had transformed into a saber as he slashed at the ice violently with strength that seemed like it was bestowed by God. Bang! A crack suddenly appeared on the hard ice. The crack spread out before it gradually slowed down and stopped completely. How's this possible? Yang Hong's expression changed when he saw the ice that trapped them did not break even after he had used his full force to slash it with his saber. Father! They're getting away! They're getting away! Quick! Quick! Yang Fei's expression changed drastically when he saw the two silhouettes disappeared from Yang Peak. I would like to see how times you'll be able to withstand the slash from my saber. Yang Hong saw Yang Shui whose hair was almost completely white spitting out blood as she hovered outside the hard ice. His eyes gleamed coldly as he continued to slash with his saber. He felt immensely humiliated that he was restrained by a third one-level martial monarch stage martial artist. He must use fresh blood to wash this humiliation away. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Finally, a loud thud was heard after 3 slashes. Yang Hong finally broke the hard ice around them. Chapter 1147. FWAH. The second the hard ice broke, Yang Shui whose hair had turned completely white spat out a big mouthful of blood, and she began to sway. Yang Shui's beautiful face was as pale as paper, but she was smiling faintly. She did it. She managed to buy time for her 2 junior sisters to escape. Ka, Fair, please live well, Yang Shui mumbled softly. HMPH. A scoff sounded in the air as a saber ray charged toward Yang Shui. It pierced through her body before she could react. Yang Shui died, and her body fell from the sky. Father, go after the 2 bitches now. Don't let them get away. Yang Fei urged Yang Hong. All right. Yang Hong nodded and put the saber away. He brought his son along with him to chase after the 2 Yin Peak's disciples who ran away. Although he had wasted some time here, he believed the 2 female disciples did not escape very far. He was confident he would catch up to them even if he left now. Whoosh! Yang Hong flew out with Yang Fei in tow as they headed in the direction where Ka and Li Fei went. Peak Master of Yang Peak. Show yourself. When Yang Hong was flying with Yang Fei, a thunderous voice reverberated in the sky and the entire Yang Peak. It created an uproar in Yang Peak. Who's that? Who's so daring? Many Yang Peak's elders and disciples left their residences and looked at the sky. Swoosh! As they looked at the sky, all they could hear was an ear-piercing sound of sword whistling that came from above. Soon after, they saw a huge 5-colored sword ray behind the clouds. The 5-colored sword ray descended from the sky and headed toward Yang Peak ferociously. Oh, No, majority of them had a bad feeling about this, and their faces changed drastically. Bang! Eventually, the five-colored sword ray in the sky landed on top of Yang Peak and pierced through the peak. The entire Yang Peak began to quake suddenly. The entire mountain was shaking as though there was an earthquake. Bang! 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 Rocks were rolling down from the top of Yang Peak. There were screams and shouts of devastation, and many were injured from the falling rocks. Naturally, there were more people who were flying out of Yang Peak. Bang! Soon after, another deafening explosion sounded. The huge five-colored sword ray that pierced through Yang Peak's mountain caused the accumulated lava to spew out. The rumbling lava spewed from the top of Yang Peak that was cracked open and spilled in all directions. It looked like it was raining fire. Yang Peak's inactive volcano had suddenly turned active. Doomed. Yang Peak's doomed. Many Yang Peak's disciples hovered in the distance to watch. Their eyes showed despair when they watched the peak that was covered in lava. Who's that? Who destroyed our Yang Peak? No matter who he is, we're no match for him. All we can do is hope that our Peak Master, 2 Vice Peak Masters, and Guardian Elder will bring us justice. Destroying our Yang Peak is equivalent to looking for trouble with the entire Yin-Yang sect. No matter who it is, he must pay the price. Many Yang sect's disciples were shouting furiously. The volcano eruption had completely destroyed their cultivation land. Who's that? Initially, Yang Hong decided to ignore the person who had demanded him to show himself. He brought his son along as he continued to chase after the 2 Yin Peak's disciples. However, the sound of sword whistling, the shocking explosion, and the devastating screams gave him a bad feeling. He turned around instinctively to find Yang Peak where he had lived most of his life bathed in a sea of fire. The top of Yang Peak was spewing hot lava continuously. It made it seem as though it was raining fire in Yang Peak. Father, what happened? Yang Fei was in complete shock when he saw the scene before his eyes. Who's that? How dare you destroy my Yang Peak? Yang Hong was enraged. He was the Peak Master of Yang Peak and soon to be the sect leader of Yin-Yang sect. How could he tolerate watching the sect that was soon to be in his grasp being destroyed just like that? Whoosh! Without further delay, Yang Hong let go of Yang Fei and stepped into the sky on his own. It seemed as though he had turned into a saber as he flew away. No matter who you are, I'll tear you into pieces for destroying my Yang Peak. Yang Hong said furiously through clenched teeth as he made his way there. Seems like I'll have to wait for father to kill that person before looking for that 2 bitches. Yang Fei felt a little unwilling as he glanced at the mountain with complicated terrain under his feet. Soon after, he flew in the direction Yang Hong went. He wanted to see what was happening. I want to see who dared to provoke my father and destroy Yang Peak. Anyone who dares to go against our Yin-Yang sect must die. Yang Fei muttered to himself as his eyes gleamed. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 3 silhouettes arrived above Yang Peak where lava continued to spew ceaselessly. The silhouettes were 2 old men and a middle-aged man. Currently, all of them had anger written all over their faces. Whoosh. Soon after, Yang Hong arrived at the top of Yang Peak. Peak Master. One of the old men and the middle-aged man greeted Yang Hong when they saw him. They were the Vice Peak Masters of Yang Peak. Their position and strength were just below the Peak Master standing before them. The other old man was Yang Peak's Guardian Elder. His ability was on par with Yang Hong, the Peak Master of Yang Peak, even though in terms of seniority, he was a generation higher. Junior Uncle. Yang Hong looked at the Guardian Elder of Yang Peak after nodding at the 2 Vice Peak Masters. The Guardian Elder nodded lightly. His raised an eyebrow as his face turned somber. He seemed to have noticed something, and he suddenly lifted his head to look at the sky. Yang Hong and the other 2 Vice Peak Masters of Yang Peak followed his gaze as well. In the distance, 4 silhouettes appeared before their eyes. A purple-clad young man and red-clad woman were in the lead. There was a hint of coldness between the eyebrows of the purple-clad young man walking in the lead. His eyes gleamed coldly as though he would devour anyone who came near him. The purple-clad young man looked very young. He looked like he was 25 years old at the most. The red-clad lady next to the purple-clad young man had an extremely beautiful face. However, her face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. She was radiating an unapproachable aura. The red-clad lady seemed like she was in her early 20s. She looked even younger than the purple-clad young man. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man wearing a plain robe and a big and tall old man in golden robe walked behind the purple-clad young man and the red-clad lady. Yang Hong looked at the 4 of them. His eyes gleamed as he asked in his deep voice, "Who are you?" Are you the ones who destroyed our Yang Peak with that sword? The two peak masters of Yang Peak and the guardian elder looked at the four of them, waiting for their reply. After a while, they realized those four people intentionally ignored the peak master of Yang Peak. Junior granduncle, vice peak masters. At this moment, Yang Hong's son, Yang Fei, caught up to them. He stood behind Yang Hong and slightly bowed at the Yang Peak's guardian elder and the two vice peak masters. The rage on their faces that was targeted at the four intruders faded away and was replaced with a smile. Yang Fei looked at the four figures approaching them with a frown and asked Yang Hong, "Father, who are they?" However, his eyes lit up when he saw the red-clad lady in the lead. What a beautiful lady! She seems to be as beautiful as Ka, Li Fei, and Yang Shui. Who is the peak master of Yang Peak? The purple-clad young man in the lead finally spoke. When Yang Hong and the others heard his voice, their faces turned somber. They recognized his voice. It was the same voice that demanded to see their peak master earlier. Yang Hong had a somber expression on his face as he asked the purple-clad young man, "Are you the one who asked me to show myself earlier?" The team led by the purple-clad young man consisted of Duan Ling Tian, Feng Tian Wu, Shang Quan, and Gold Thug, who came all the way from the Berserk Mongrel Rodent clan's branch to the Yin Yang sect. They immediately rushed here when they found out Yang Peak's location. When they arrived above Yang Peak, the rage that Duan Ling Tian had been suppressing erupted as soon as he thought about his two fiancés in danger. After he shouted at the peak master of Yang Peak to show himself, he formed a huge five-colored sword ray by combining the fused profundity, sword profundity, and origin energy. He used that to pierce through Yang Peak. It caused Yang Peak's volcano to erupt and turn into a sea of fire. "You're the peak master of Yang Peak." Duan Ling Tian stared at Yang Hong coldly after he heard Yang Hong's words. "So, you're the one who's holding my fiancés hostage and forcing them to marry your son." As Duan Ling Tian spoke, killing intent rose from his body. "Your fiancés?" Yang Hong frowned. He could not make sense of what Duan Ling Tian said. "So you're the two bitches' fiancé?" Yang Fei reacted immediately. He observed Duan Ling Tian with jealousy in his eyes. "So the two bitches prefer a faggot like you?" In all honesty, Yang Fei thought the purple-clad young man standing before him was handsome. His charisma made him feel ashamed of himself. Therefore, the only thing he could do was to belittle him with words. "Bitches." When Duan Ling Tian heard Yang Fei's words, he instantly narrowed his eyes and the five-colored sword-shaped flame surged on his body. It radiated a majestic and powerful aura. Whoosh! Following that, Yang Hong and the three senior officials of Yang Peak only heard the fleeting sound of sword whistling in the air. Pa! Ah! In the next second, the sound of something cracking resounded in the air, followed by a devastating shriek. It caused all their faces to change. Chapter 1148. Four of them turned to look after they heard the sound. The first thing they saw was fresh blood splattering in the air. Yang Fei's arm was severed from his body and fell from the sky. Meanwhile, Yang Fei was screaming in agony. Whoosh! Yang Hong's face turned somber. He did not dare to delay as he lifted his arm. An invisible energy swept out and grabbed his son's severed arm. He moved like a bolt of lightning to his son's side and attempted to reattach the severed arm to his body. Whoosh! Another fleeting sound of sword whistling sounded again. Just like before, Yang Hong and the others did not have time to react. Pa! Arg! It was the sound of something breaking again. Yang Hong, the peak master of Yang Peak, groaned as he attempted to endure the pain from having his arm severed. It was the arm that was holding on to his son's severed arm. Before he managed to attach his son's severed arm, his own arm was severed. At this moment, the two severed arms that were linked together fell from above. In just a blink of an eye, they fell into the scorching lava that was spewing continuously from Yang Peak and was burned into ashes. Yang Hong and the others did not dare to make a move. The reason they were so obedient was due to the purple-clad man's words. "I'll sever the arms of those who dare to reattach those arms." The cold and terrifying voice entered Yang Hong and the others' ears. It caused chills to run up their spines. However, they did not doubt the words that person had spoken. "Who are you?" Yang Hong staunched the fresh blood that was spurting out of the wound from his severed arm as he looked at the purple-clad young man. His face was pale, and there were fear and shock in his eyes. Meanwhile, the guardian elder and vice peak masters of Yang Peak looked at the purple-clad young man solemnly. They could not catch the purple-clad young man's movements both times when he swung his sword. It was so fast that they could not react in time at all. Based on that, they could tell the purple-clad young man's ability was not inferior to theirs. In fact, he might be even stronger than them. After Yang Fei stopped his wound from bleeding out, he remained quiet. Although he was enraged, he knew he could not afford to offend Ka and Li Fei's fiancé. How's it possible that the two bitches' fiancé is so powerful? Yang Fei felt unwilling. He could not stop screaming in his heart. He was already ashamed that he lost to the man in both looks and charisma. Now that he discovered that man's ability was far ahead of him, he felt even more resentful. He looks younger than me. How's it possible that his cultivation base is so powerful? Demon. He must be a demon that has lived for 100 years. Eventually, Yang Fei began to console himself, those two are real bitches. I can't believe they found a demon who has lived for 100 years to be their fiancé. I want to see Ka and Li Fei, Duan Lingtian said calmly as he glared coldly at Yang Hong. The five-colored sword ray on his body and the heaven and earth energy that had yet to form the heaven and earth phenomenon above his head faded away. He seemed calm, but there was a hint of killing intent hidden in the depth of his eyes. The pressure he emitted was like a giant rock pressing down on one's body. If I don't see them after 30 breaths, your son will definitely die. Duan Lingtian threatened the peak master of Yang Peak, Yang Hong. You haven't answered me. Who are you? Yang Hong's expression turned even uglier. He had never been threatened like this before. The origin energy on his body turned into milky flames that soared before it turned into fiery red flames. Bolts of purple lightning surrounded the fiery red flames. Whoosh! When the saber energy appeared, the flames entwined with bolts of purple lightning that surrounded Yang Hong's body turned into a gigantic saber-shaped flame in just a blink of an eye. It seemed as though it could tear the sky open. Fire profundity, thunder profundity, saber profundity. When a big fiery red saber appeared in Yang Hong's hand, the heaven and earth energy rumbled above his head. Soon after, it formed the heaven and earth phenomenon. Ancient horned dragon silhouettes appeared one after another. They looked majestic when they appeared in the sky. In the next second, 4 ancient black dragon silhouettes appeared. In comparison, they made the hundreds of ancient horned dragon silhouettes seem insignificant. 8th level martial monarch stage. Grade 1 spirit saber. 8th level monarch stage fire profundity. 5th level monarch stage saber profundity. 3rd level monarch stage thunder profundity. These were the extent of Yang Hong's ability. He could mobilize the strength of 4 ancient black dragons and close to 1,000 ancient horned dragons. I told you earlier, I'm Ka and Li Fei's fiancé, I don't want to repeat myself for the 3rd time. Also, you have 25 breaths left. Faced with Yang Hong who had the strength of 4 ancient black dragons and close to 1,000 ancient horned dragons, Duan Lingtian remained unperturbed. He said calmly, if I don't see them after 25 breaths, you'll have to collect your son's body. We'll see if you're capable of doing that. Yang Hong who was initially enraged by Duan Lingtian's threat could no longer hold it in when Duan Lingtian threatened him for the 2nd time. He dashed toward Duan Lingtian after he shouted at him. Although Duan Lingtian's 2 swings of the sword were so fast that he could not even react in time, he was in denial. He consoled himself and told himself he did not have time to react because he was not paying attention. Otherwise, he would have been able to defend against his 2 strikes. Whoosh! Yang Hong dashed out at the speed of light. As he swung his saber, he seemed to have turned into a giant flaming saber surrounded by thick bolts of lightning. The gigantic flaming saber emitted a scorching aura. The wind burned as well when it swept out along with the saber. The people present on the scene felt the burning wind sweeping toward them. It felt as though they were placed on a stove. Die! Yang Hong shouted furiously when the fiery red gigantic saber was above Duan Lingtian's head. Bang! The flames on the gigantic flaming saber rose again. The thick bolts of purple lightning became even thicker as a terrifying aura swept out. Whoosh! The rise of the gigantic flaming saber's energy caused its speed and power to rise to its peak as it descended toward Duan Lingtian to slice him into 2. Meanwhile, everyone on the scene held their breath. Die! Die! Yang Fei had a maniacal look on his face. In his opinion, once his father's saber landed on the purple-clad young man who severed his arm, the young man would definitely be sliced into 2. Contrary to Yang Hong and his son who had lost their minds, the guardian elder and the 2 vice-peak masters of Yang Peak were frowning as an ominous feeling rose in their hearts. Meanwhile, the red-clad lady, Feng Tian Wu, stood quietly next to Duan Lingtian. Her expression remained calm as though she was unaware of the saber that was approaching Duan Lingtian. Shang Quan and Gold Thud also stood calmly behind Duan Lingtian. They were like Feng Tian Wu. They had full confidence in Duan Lingtian's victory. Whoosh! As the gigantic flaming saber charged out, waves of scorching aura followed. When it was above Duan Lingtian's head, it made him feel like he was thrown into a sea of fire. Duan Lingtian stood still even when the gigantic flame saber was close to him. However, his energy continued to rise before it turned into 3 5-colored divine dragons in just a blink of an eye. The 3 5-colored divine dragons sparkled with sword energy. They were fast and slashed like sharp swords as they revolved around Duan Lingtian's body. A light shield would form around Duan Lingtian's body in the wake of the 3 5-colored divine dragons' movements. The 5-colored light shield protected Duan Lingtian within it. Bang! At this moment, the gigantic flame saber landed on the light shield around Duan Lingtian's body. The light shield trembled slightly from the collision. Every time the gigantic flaming saber landed on the 5-colored light shield, the shield would be weakened. However, the 5-colored shield was still intact even though the gigantic flaming saber's energy was almost exhausted. How's this possible? Yang Hong had an expression of disbelief on his face as he held the gigantic flaming saber. Nothing's impossible, Duan Lingtian calmly replied Yang Hong. Subsequently, he extended his arm at lightning speed and grabbed the Grade 1 spirit saber in Yang Hong's hand. He did not fear its energy and casually snatched it out of Yang Hong's hand. Yang Hong's expression changed once again. Duan Lingtian snatched his saber with just his bare hands. One must know that his saber contained the strength of 4 ancient black dragons and close to 1,000 ancient horned dragons. Yang Hong seemed to notice something as he lifted his head immediately. He looked above the purple-clad young man's head. The heaven and earth phenomenon had already formed even before he turned to look. He was looking at the silhouettes of 4 ancient black dragons and 3,000 ancient horned dragons. His face turned deathly pale. Without the help of spirit weapons, Duan Lingtian's defensive martial skill alone was equivalent to the strength of 4 ancient black dragons and 3,000 ancient horned dragons. Duan Lingtian had more than 2,000 ancient horned dragons compared to Yang Hong, who was using a Grade 1 spirit saber. At this moment, Yang Hong finally realized there was a big gap between the purple-clad young man's strength and his strength. Who was he? The Guardian Elder and 2 Vice Peak Masters of Yang Peak's faces changed drastically. Although they were mentally prepared, they did not expect Duan Lingtian's strength, without using any spirit weapon, would be stronger than Yang Hong, who was using a spirit weapon. How's this possible? Yang Fei turned pale. His eyes widened when he saw the scene before his eyes. He could not believe that it was real. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian moved at this moment. He brutally swung the Grade 1 spirit saber that he snatched from Yang Hong at Yang Hong. When the saber landed on Yang Hong, the power from the attack sent Yang Hong flying like an arrow that left its bow. He only managed to break the momentum after flying 100 meters out. FWAH! FWAH! At this moment, Yang Hong spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. He looked deathly pale. You have 20 breaths left, Duan Lingtian said coldly. Chapter 1149, Chapter 1150. The death of Yang Hong and son. Father. Seeing that his father was severely injured, Yang Fei had a drastic change of expression. His face turned somber after hearing what Duan Lingtian said. He looked at Duan Lingtian with a vengeance and said furiously, they're no longer at Yang Peak. If you're looking for them, go and look for them yourself. They're not at Yang Peak. Naturally, Duan Lingtian did not believe Yang Fei. As he had the ferocious will to kill in his eyes, an invisible, majestic energy swept out when he lifted his arm. The energy covered Yang Fei and dragged him to Duan Lingtian forcefully. Subsequently, Duan Lingtian made a gripping gesture. Yang Fei, who seemed to be hanging in midair not far away, appeared to be choked by an invisible hand without Duan Lingtian even touching him. His face was flushed, and it was evident that he was suffering great pain. You, what are you doing? After struggling for a while, Yang Fei only managed to spit out those few words. He was looking at Duan Lingtian in fear now, like he was facing a judge who could decide if he would die or live. Far away, Yang Hong's expression fell desperately when he saw his son in Duan Lingtian's grasp. FWAH. However, before he could catch his breath, he spat a mouthful of blood out again while feeling wobbly. He only recovered a little after consuming a healing medicinal pill. Meanwhile, the Guardian Elder of Yang Peak and the 2 Vice Peak Masters remained where they were, not daring to do anything. Among the 3 of them, the Guardian Elder possessed the most powerful ability. The Guardian Elder's ability was similar to their Yang Peak's Peak Master Yang Hong. However, the purple-clad young man before them exhibited a strength that was even more powerful than Yang Hong. He had shown his full force before touching him and even attacked him with his bare hands. How terrifying would he be if he were to use spirit weapons? They did not dare to imagine. No, even without spirit weapons, given Duan Lingtian's ability, it was sufficient to conquer Yang Peak and even the entire Yin Yang Peak. It would be a dead end for them if they were to attack Duan Lingtian now. The invisible energy that Duan Lingtian extended with his arm turned into a hand and gripped Yang Fei's neck telekinetically. He said in a cold tone at the same time, "You still have 15 breaths of time." He was now sure that the young man before him was the son of the Peak Master of the Yang Peak who would marry Ka a year later. He would have killed him much earlier if he, Yang Fei, were not useful to him. How dare he attempt to touch his lady? Death of 100 times would not be enough for such people. Yang Peak's Peak Master, you must seize the time that you have left. Duan Lingtian looked gravely at Yang Hong immediately. His eyes were as brutal as a saber as he spoke calmly. Despite his calm demeanor, there was a bone-piercing chill in his eyes. Yang Hong could not help but shudder. "They've run away," Yang Hong took a deep breath in and said in his deep voice while looking at Duan Lingtian. "They ran away." Duan Lingtian's face turned somber. "What do you mean?" "Before you arrived, I was constrained by their senior sister Yang Shui with her innate ability while they seized the opportunity and ran towards the other side of Yang Peak. We were just going after them, but then you came." Yang Hong suppressed his rage and pointed at the side of Yang Peak as he spoke softly. Although the direction he pointed at was also a mountainous forest with a complicated terrain, it was not the direction where Ka and Feier had run to. He had indicated the wrong direction on purpose to mislead Duan Lingtian. However, Duan Lingtian had no idea that Yang Hong was misleading him. "How can you prove that they've escaped?" Duan Lingtian asked with his deep voice. There was an unnatural, cold gleam in his eyes like he would devour anyone who came near him. "Yang Shui's body's on that tree." Yang Hong pointed at a looming tree beside the tip of Yang Peak. The tree was entirely surrounded by fiery lava, and it was shaking from the rumbling lava. The rumbling lava might soon uproot the tree. "Gold Thug," Duan Lingtian spoke calmly. Almost as soon as Duan Lingtian was done speaking, the gold thug who stood behind him vanished from where he was like a lightning bolt. He appeared at the tree when he appeared again. "That's so fast." The gold thug's speed shocked the 4 high management of Yang Peak including Yang Hong. Although the golden-robed old man's speed was nothing like theirs, they were not that far apart as the gold thug was a 6th-level martial monarch stage after all. However, such a person was just the purple-clad young man's sidekick and underling. Whoosh! In the next second, the gold thug appeared before Duan Lingtian again. This time, in his arms, he held a lady clad in white who was covered in blood and had utterly lost the breath of life. The lady had hair as white as snow. Underneath her white hair was a drop-dead gorgeous face. Apart from the lack of color, there was coldness on her face. "It really is Yang Shui. She's dead. Peak Master, you killed Yang Shui." The 2 vice Peak Masters of Yang Peak had a change of expression as they recognized the lady with white hair. Yang Shui was the most outstanding disciple in Yin Peak. If Yin Peak's Peak Master and the 2 Vice Peak Masters found out that Yang Peak's Peak Master had killed Yang Shui, they would not let it go just like that. Yang Hong glared at the both of them upon hearing what they said. He seemed to blame them for spilling what they should not. "Master." The gold thug looked at Duan Lingtian and shook his head. "It's too late. There's nothing that we can do." Duan Lingtian recalled his hand that was gripping Yang Fei with the invisible energy and flew to the gold thug. He began to check on the condition of the lady in white in the gold thug's arms. Very soon, he found out that it was too late to save the lady now, just like what the gold thug had concluded. "She's Ka and Li Fei's senior sister. The Shui that Peak Master Qin Shang mentioned." Duan Lingtian mumbled softly, appearing to recall something. "Master, I smell the scent of 2 ladies who she had contact with. They've gone in that direction, the scent's faint, so they should have been gone for a while now." The gold thug's nose wiggled, and he pointed at the other side of Yang Peak. Yang Hong and his son looked at each other after hearing what the gold thug said. They saw grave fear reflected in each other's eyes. How did he manage to sniff that out? Was he a dog? The direction the gold thug had pointed in was where Ka and Li Fei had left earlier. Yang Hong turned extremely dismal when he snapped back to his senses. He definitely would not have misled the purple-clad young man on purpose by pointing in the wrong direction had he known that he had a person who had such a sharp nose with him. 2 cents. That should be the 2 ladies, Gold Thug, give her to Shang Quan. You get them back. If you can't trace their scent, just scream my name and tell them that I'm here. They'll follow you." Duan Lingtian's eyes lit up as he ordered immediately. His tone became a little hurried as he spoke. Even though hurried, he did not lose his rationale. He believed that getting the Gold Thug to go after the two ladies would be more efficient than anyone else, including himself. After all, the Gold Thug's true form was a hell golden hound and dogs had extremely sharp noses. "Yes, master," the Gold Thug responded respectfully and passed the lifeless Yang Shui to Shang Quan. He then flew away, trailing the two scents like a bolt of lightning that streaked through the sky. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian heard a swishing at the moment. It was Yang Hong running away with Yang Fei. Meanwhile, the three high management of Yang Peak did not move at all. They knew that they might not be able to run even if they wanted to. Moreover, their attempt to escape would most probably agitate the powerful purple-clad young man before them. Therefore, they chose to be rational and stayed put. However, there was pain and sorrow deep in the Yang Peak's guardian elder's eyes. Nobody knew what he was thinking about. Trying to run, Duan Lingtian grinned and vanished from where he was as he shifted. Dragon soaring the 9 heavens. All of a sudden, Duan Lingtian looked like he turned into a 5-colored divine dragon as he flew out like a razor-sharp sword tearing the sky. When one looked closely, apart from the 5-colored energy around Duan Lingtian's body, there was a layer of sword energy that had formed. It was the sword profundity he grasped. Soon, Duan Lingtian surpassed Yang Hong and his son, blocking their way. "What do you want from us?" Yang Hong had a drastic change of expression as he stared at Duan Lingtian and asked in his deep voice as they were blocked. "What do you think?" Duan Lingtian grinned. "We really didn't do anything to your two fiancés, your man's going after them." With his sharp nose, it won't be difficult for him to find them. Yang Hong took a deep breath and said calmly while trying hard to suppress the fear in him. "That's another thing. You misled me on purpose aside. Do you think I would let both of you go since you killed my two fiancés' senior sister?" Duan Lingtian's eyes turned frosty gradually while gushes of the will to kill came out of his body. They swept through Yang Hong and his son. "Father, I don't want to die. I don't want to die." It was manageable for Yang Hong to bear Duan Lingtian's will to kill, but not his son, Yang Fei. He began to scream. His image was lost as his face was distorted and his eyes filled with fear. "It was I who killed Yang Shui. It has nothing to do with my son. You can kill me, but please let my son go." Yang Hong stepped forward and protected his son by standing before him. He stared at Duan Lingtian with determination. He had experienced Duan Lingtian's ability before, and he did not have the will to fight right now. The only thing that he hoped for was for Duan Lingtian to let his son go after killing him. "You're not worthy of bargaining with me." Duan Lingtian's eyes were frigid. As soon as he was done speaking, he vanished from where he was and turned into a gigantic 5-colored sword as he dashed towards Yang Hong and his son. Bang, 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 comma. A loud explosion reverberated wherever the gigantic sword swept through. The rumbling heaven and earth energy that followed above the sky was deafening. Yang Hong and his son turned into ashes as a result of the attack by the massive 5-colored sword, and they vanished from this world altogether. They left behind 2 spatial rings, and a couple of concept and profundity fragments fell from above. Such an ending happened partly because Yang Hong did not have the will to fight when he encountered Duan Lingtian. Otherwise, even though he would still die in the end, he could forcefully take Duan Lingtian's blows for a couple of breaths if he were to fight with his full force. Whoosh! Duan Lingtian paused his movement, then lifted his arm and put away the spatial rings as well as the concept and profundity fragments that belonged to Yang Hong and his son. Chapter 1150. Run, run away, we must get out of here. That was the only thought Li Fei and Ka had in their minds as they fled. They helped each other pass through the mountain forest with the rough terrain. They turned left and right, tearing through the foliage without having a destination in mind. Currently, they had no destination to go to. The only thing they wanted to do was to get far away from the Yin-Yang sect and to run for their lives. "Sister Fair, do you think senior sister could possibly live?" Concern flashed on Ka's shy face as her bright eyes were filled with tears while she spoke to Li Fei beside her softly. Li Fei became quiet after hearing what she said. She was silent because she knew it was almost impossible for their senior sister to be alive. "I wonder how did the volcano at Yang Peak erupt out of nowhere? I guess they didn't come after us because of that. Sister Ka, we must get out of here and continue our lives so that we can avenge Master and senior sister." Li Fei glanced at Yang Peak that was spewing lava continuously behind them and changed the topic as she spoke to Ka next to her. Ka nodded with determination while vengeance sparkled in her eyes. I must avenge master and senior sister. I must. A seed of retribution was growing in Ka's heart. That way, Li Fei said to Ka and made a turn. They proceeded on their journey away from the yin-yang sect through a shortcut. They dared not fly in the air. Although it would be much faster, they would be an easy target. With their cultivation base, anyone could catch up with them very soon if they flew in the air. Therefore, speed was not their priority. All they wanted to do was to get away alive. Whoosh! A golden silhouette halted suddenly not far away in the air from where the two ladies were. It was a big and tall old man in a golden robe. The scent got mixed up here, it's hard to trace it now. The golden-robed old man was none other than the gold thug, who Duan Lingtian had instructed to retrieve Ka and Li Fei, and he was frowning right now. His true form was a hell golden hound. It was a dog-demon beast with an extra sharp snout. However, although his nose was sharp, the scent in the area was mixed up, causing the two scents that he was tracking to become untraceable at the moment. Whoosh, 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 without any further delay, the gold thug was flying back and forth in an attempt to find the two scents, but his effort was to no avail. Oh well, the only way is to scream now, the gold thug sighed. Hopefully, the two liege ladies can hear me and meet me in time, that way, I can report to master when I get back. As he thought to himself, the gold thug did not dawdle any further as he screamed after opening his mouth, to the two liege ladies. My master is Duan Lingtian, and he has arrived at the yin-yang sect. If you hear me, please come out of hiding and follow me to see my master. The gold thug's voice contained 6th-level monarch stage origin energy. It was like an explosive thunder as he spoke, sweeping through the mountain forest around. At that moment, he scared the birds which flew away. There were two ladies in white clutching tightly to each other in a canyon near the mountain. They stayed close to the mountain wall and looked above at that moment. Unfortunately, they did not see anything. However, they had heard the scream earlier loud and clear. To the two liege ladies. My master is Duan Lingtian, and he has arrived at the yin-yang sect now. If you hear me, please come out of hiding and follow me to see my master. Very soon, the voice echoed again, although this time, it was a little further away. It was apparent that the person had moved further away. At that moment, the two ladies who hid in the canyon felt relieved. Sister Fair, do you think he's really young master's underling? One of them blushed shyly on her beautiful cheeks as she looked at Li Fei next to her and asked with a little hesitation. She was Ka. Judging from the range that the person's voice can reach, his cultivation is at least above 4th-level martial monarch stage. Do you think the rascal would call young master, master? Li Fei shook her head. Ka became quiet after hearing what Li Fei said. She was right, it was impossible that their young master would get an underling with a cultivation base above the 4th-level martial monarch stage even if their young master really were there. Every martial monarch powerhouse was arrogant. Unless the person had a more powerful martial ability, it was impossible that a powerhouse would become someone's underling, let alone call someone master. Although the rascal is powerful, the cultivation resources are limited at the 7-star sword sect in the Azure Forest Imperial Kingdom. Even if he made it to the Darkstone Empire or even the Darken Dynasty, it's impossible for the elevation of his ability to be on par with ours. Li Fei voiced her speculation. Even if he left the Darken Dynasty and joined a third-rate or even a second-rate force in the Outer Land, it's impossible for him to have a higher elevation than ours. So, this person's definitely not the rascal's man. He must be someone who Yang Hong and his son asked to disguise as the rascal's underling to lure us in. Li Fei was sure of herself as she spoke. But, I don't think they knew young master's name. While she agreed with what Li Fei said, Ka was skeptical. We've mentioned the rascal's name to senior sister before. There were many Yin Peak disciples around a few times when senior sister mentioned his name. Li Fei speculated, perhaps they found out about rascal's name from some Yin Peak disciples. I guess that's what happened. Hearing what Li Fei said, Ka nodded while the doubts in her dissolved. To the two liege ladies. My master is Duan Lingtian, and he has arrived at the yin-yang sect now. If you hear me, please come out of hiding and follow me to see my master. To the two liege ladies. My master is Duan Lingtian, and he has arrived at the yin-yang sect now. If you hear me, please come out of hiding and follow me to see my master. The voice resounded from far away continuously. It was getting further and further away and eventually vanished from Li Fei and Ka's ears. Let's go, Li Fei said to Ka, and they proceeded on their journey. Sister Fei, what's our plan after this? Do we take the swift boat crossing the Ruo Shui River to the southern outer land to look for young master? Ka glanced at Li Fei and asked. Although our cultivation base has entered martial monarch stage, it's only on first level martial monarch stage, we'll definitely die if we encounter powerful pirates along the Ruo Shui River. Li Fei said in all seriousness, it's very risky for us to take the swift boat to cross the Ruo Shui River to the southern outer land with our current cultivation base. So, what do we do next? Ka asked, complying with her. At the moment, they were not only living for themselves, they were also living for humanity. Apart from that, they were living for their master and senior sister who were already dead. Therefore, they did not dare to take the risk. When they had followed their senior sister to the Yin-Yang sect back then, they managed to get there successfully because of a 5th-level martial monarch stage Yin Peak's elder who had followed them along the way. They remembered the most powerful pirate that they had encountered along the way on the swift boat was on the 4th-level martial monarch stage. They encountered 2 pirates of the same level after that. If they were to encounter a 4th-level martial monarch pirate now, they would definitely be dead. We'll find a remote place to hide and cultivate after we get out. Li Fei's eyes lit up as she said slowly, it was said that some martial emperor powerhouses in the inner land would recruit disciples and followers publicly 3 years later. When the time comes, we'll head to Yuhan Valley to participate in the test the martial emperor Yuhan issues. We'll become her disciple if we pass the test. We'll get better cultivation resources if we cultivate under a martial emperor. Also, with the martial emperor's teachings, the rate of our abilities improving will skyrocket. If we become the direct disciple of the martial emperor, all we have to do is to say the word to get the martial emperor to send her 1 people to kill Yang Hong. Li Fei had a cold gleam flashing in her eyes when she mentioned Yang Hong. Yuhan Valley, martial emperor Yuhan, Ka mumbled, I think I've heard of this martial emperor Yuhan. Is she the martial emperor of Yuhan Valley in the far northern area of the inner land? Yes, that's her, Li Fei nodded. Ka's voice turned a little cold all of a sudden. If one of us is fortunate enough to become a direct disciple of the martial emperor, let's not get the martial emperor to send his people to kill Yang Hong, all right? Li Fei was surprised and asked while frowning, why? I want to kill him myself. Ka's voice tightened as it was filled with a vengeance that came from her bones. I understand now, Li Fei nodded. We must depend on our own strength to avenge Master and Senior, they'll rest in peace if we do that. As Li Fei and Ka continued their journey away from the Yin-Yang sect, Duan Ling Tian returned to Feng Tianwu after putting away the spatial rings and the couple of concept and profundity fragments that Yang Hong and his son had left behind above the top of Yang Peak of the Yin-Yang sect. His attention was fixed on the 3 Yang Peak high management members immediately. He was glaring at them with the cold intention to kill. Sir, we've just found out about what Yang Hong did. Although we know about your 2 fiancés, whatever we say didn't matter, so there was no way for us to stop Yang Hong from acting. One of the vice peak masters of Yang Peak took the lead to speak to Duan Ling Tian as he looked at him. Yes, sir, our ability's lower than his whenever Yang Hong's around, so we could only follow his instructions, but I swear I've never done anything bad to your 2 fiancés, the other Yang Peak's vice peak master proceeded to speak. Duan Ling Tian glanced at the both of them calmly and his eyes eventually locked onto the old man who had yet to say anything. Through the experience recorded in the rebirth martial emperor's memory, he could tell by a glance that the old man's ability was more potent than the other 2. His ability might even be on par with Yang Hong. Would you like to be the sect leader of the Yin-Yang sect? The old man, who happened to be studying Duan Ling Tian, asked. 1 per instead of his because they only take female disciples in Yuhan Valley. Chapter 1151. Having heard the old man's words, not only did Duan Ling Tian feel shocked, even Feng Tianwu and Shang Quan could not help but feel stunned. Both of Vice Peak Masters of Yang Peak glanced at the old man and furrowed their brows, but they chose not to say anything. After all, they were weaker than the old man. Even if they were stronger than him, they might offend the purple-clad youth with their remarks. By then, they would not even know what they died for. The scene of Yang Hong and his son getting killed were still fresh in their minds. Why did you ask about that? Duan Ling Tian recovered from the shock and asked coolly while looking at the old man calmly as if the position as the sect leader of a first-rate force was not tempting to him. In fact, he was genuinely uninterested in it. I thought you're a good fit to be the sect leader of our Yin-Yang sect. With your strength and my assistance, it is almost certain that you'll be the sect leader if you want to, the old man continued with pride in his tone. Naturally, he could take on the role. Apart from being the guardian elder of Yang Peak, he was also the junior brother of the last Peak Master of Yang Peak. He had the absolute right to speak on Yang Peak. His status in Yang Peak was no lower than Peak Master of Yang Peaks, Yang Hong, who had just been killed by Duan Lingtian. Really? Duan Lingtian stared at the old man. As far as I know, the Yin-Yang sect is more than just Yang Peak. Can you, being from Yang Peak, represent Yin Peak? Yin Peak, the old man was first dazed, then he smiled after hearing those words. Now, Yin Peak exists only in name, if you want to, I alone would be enough to help you rein them in. Oh, Duan Lingtian suddenly became interested after hearing the old man's offer. He asked with a gleam in his eyes, I heard that Peak Master of Yin Peak and one of the Vice Peak Masters had to go under strict closed-door cultivation to heal, are you trying to loot a burning house? Loot a burning house? The old man shook his head. Not really. The Peak Master of Yin Peak and that Vice Peak Master of Yin Peak were killed by Yang Hong not too long ago. If you establish ownership with Yang Hong's spatial ring, you might find the spatial ring of the Peak Master of Yin Peak, the old man calmly said as if he let things drift since they did not affect him. Duan Lingtian's face sank. If he remembered correctly, Yin Peak's Vice Peak Master who was in closed-door cultivation seemed to be the master of both his fiancées. Had Yang Hong killed her? The Peak Master of Yin Peak was. The Peak Master killed her. At once, both of the Vice Peak Masters of Yang Peak were stunned. They were well and thoroughly dumbfounded. What was their Peak Master trying to do? However, there was no one to be accountable for that now that their Peak Master was also dead. Why did Yang Hong want to kill them? Duan Lingtian asked in a low voice. It was because he wanted to be Yin-Yang sect's sect leader. Throughout the history of the Yin-Yang sect, there's rarely been a sect leader because the sect leader will only appear when either Yin Peak or the Peak Master of Yang Peak's strength overwhelms the other Peak Masters. The old man answered slowly, in this generation's Yin-Yang sect, as Peak Master of Yang Peak, Yang Hong's strength was on par with the Peak Master of Yin Peak. Therefore, the only way for him to become the sect leader of the Yin-Yang sect was for him to kill the Peak Master of Yin Peak when she's hurt. If he wanted to be the sect leader, he could just kill the Peak Master of Yin Peak. Why did he kill another Vice Peak Master of Yin Peak as well? Duan Lingtian gradually lowered his voice. The other Yin Peak's Vice Peak Master he referred to was the master of both his fiancées. You're talking about Yang Shui and the master of both your fiancées, aren't you? The old man guessed why Duan Lingtian had asked such a question and he continued, even though the master of both your fiancées was just the Vice Peak Master of Yin Peak, she was as strong as the Peak Master of Yin Peak. If only the Peak Master of Yin Peak died, she would become the new Peak Master of Yin Peak. At that time, Yang Hong still couldn't be the sect leader of the whole of Yin-Yang sect, the old man finished in a single breath. Now, Duan Lingtian completely understood the situation. In Yang Hong's opinion, the master of both his fiancées was also an obstacle like the Peak Master of Yin Peak. He could only be unimpeded if all the hurdles were cleared. You fathom it so clearly. Was it you who joined hands with Yang Hong to kill the Peak Master and Vice Peak Master of Yin Peak? Soon, Duan Lingtian's eyes glinted with coldness, and he immediately locked his gaze on the old man. Killing intent began to brew around his body. As soon as he admitted to it, he would not hesitate to attack and kill the old man in front of him. The two Vice Peak Masters of Yang Peak also glanced at the old man with slightly gloomy faces. If what the old man said was true, then their Peak Master of Yang Peak, Yang Hong, who had just been killed, was a lunatic. The old man looked at Duan Lingtian without fear and said calmly, I'm his junior uncle. He told me this a few days ago to ask for my assistance for him to be the sect leader of the Yin-Yang sect. Elder Yun, why didn't you hold the Peak Master accountable for doing such deeds? Soon, one of the Vice Peak Masters of Yang Peak could not help but question the old man. Although the other Vice Peak Master of Yang Peak did not say anything, he looked at the old man with a disheartened expression. Hold him accountable. The old man glanced at the Vice Peak Master of Yang Peak who had questioned him. How can I hold him accountable? Setting aside the fact that my strength wasn't really enough to do anything to him, even if my strength did surpass him, can I kill him? After the old man said that, both the Vice Peak Masters of Yang Peak were silenced. If you're willing, I can assist you to be our Yin-Yang sect's new sect leader. Once again, the old man looked at Duan Lingtian and enunciated. What? Trying to get me to take over the mess in the Yin-Yang sect? Duan Lingtian coolly glanced at the old man and asked intently, or perhaps, you have other intentions? Currently, the 4 8th level martial monarch stage martial artists of the Yin-Yang sect are all dead except for me. The Yin-Yang sect is in the midst of a storm. Our Yin-Yang sect can only be stabilized again if you become our sect leader. As he said, he lowered his head. A gleam flashed in the depth of his eyes. No one including Duan Lingtian saw that because his head was lowered. Please be our sect leader of the Yin-Yang sect. Immediately, the vice peak masters of Yang Peak reacted after the reminder from the old man. They hurriedly bowed and lowered their heads towards Duan Lingtian. We'll pledge our lives to you. When they remembered that 3 of the Yin-Yang sect's pillars were dead, they realized the current crisis faced by the sect and broke out in a cold sweat out of fear. Although the Yin-Yang sect was a first-rate force in the inner land of the Cloud Continent, it still had conflicts with other first-rate forces after being passed down for thousands of years. If those first-rate forces were aware of the Yin-Yang sect's current situation, they would undoubtedly destroy the sect the moment they had the opportunity. It would only be possible for the Yin-Yang sect to overcome this crisis if the purple-clad youth before them became the new sect leader of the sect. However, Duan Lingtian seemed to have noticed something and turned around, ignoring the guardian elders of Yang Peak and both the vice peak masters. The moment he turned, Duan Lingtian's face darkened slightly. Master. At that time, a golden figure advanced from afar and stopped near Duan Lingtian. It was the gold thug whom he had sent out. The gold thug had left earlier, but he still came back alone. Didn't find it. Duan Lingtian's face sank. I, the gold thug, am useless. The gold thug hung his head and felt ashamed to face his master. Let's talk as we walk, Duan Lingtian called out to the gold thug, and then he flew out quickly, heading towards the direction where the gold thug had just come from. The gold thug hurriedly caught up with him. As for Feng Tianwu and Shang Quan, they naturally followed the pair. The guardian elders of Yang Peak and both vice peak masters looked at each other and followed suit. How can you lose them with your sense of smell? On the way, Duan Lingtian maintained his speed at the same level as the gold thugs and asked him in a deep voice. I followed the smell that was left behind by both liege ladies all the way to that side where I lost them because the smell was heterogeneous. I looked around but never picked it up again, the gold thug said a bit helplessly. Did you do as I said and yelled my name? Duan Lingtian asked. I did. The gold thug nodded. My voice covered the surrounding area, but no one responded. Duan Lingtian fell into silence. Moments later, he suddenly stopped moving. The gold thug followed suit and stopped. He followed behind Duan Lingtian like a shadow. Soon, the guardian elders of Yang Peak and both vice peak masters whom Duan Lingtian and the gold thug were waiting for arrived. Duan Lingtian looked at the 3 of them and asked in a cold voice, what's the current cultivation base of both my fiancés? Both were on first-level martial monarch stage, one of the vice peak masters of Yang Peak said. First-level martial monarch stage? Duan Lingtian was amazed by their breakthrough. However, he knew it was not the time to be surprised. Finding both of them was a more urgent matter. First-level martial monarch stage, since they're fleeing, they wouldn't dare to use the air and fly. They can only take advantage of the complicated terrain of the area. Duan Lingtian overlooked the complicated terrain filled with forests beneath his feet and speculated. For that reason, they shouldn't be very fast. Duan Lingtian's eyes gleamed, and he said coolly, let's look around again. If we find them, I might consider being your new sect leader. Duan Lingtian's later statement was undoubtedly aimed towards the 3 people from the Yin-Yang sect's Yang Peak. After the 3 of them heard him, their eyes brightened as they looked at each other. Then, they flew off in 3 different directions. Feng Tianwu and Shang Quan finally arrived. We should split up and find them. Duan Lingtian flew off alone towards as fast as lightning after he greeted the both of them. At once, Feng Tianwu, Shang Quan, and the gold thug also split up and went looking. Both of his fiancés, they must be outstanding. Feng Tianwu thought while she combed the forest beneath her. After her amnesia, she had learned about the existence of both Ka and Li Fei from Duan Lingtian when they were on the way to the Yin-Yang sect. Chapter 1152. 2 young mistresses, if any of you are around, please show yourselves quickly. Please don't hide from us. Your fiancé is here. He has killed Yang Hong and his son, and he is going to become the sect leader of the Yin-Yang sect. The 2 vice peak masters of Yang Peak were searching for the 2 girls high and low while shouting loudly. Their voices which contained origin energy boomed across the landscape loudly and startled the sparrows in the trees. However, not a single human soul was in sight. HMPH. They came looking for us as well, what an obvious lie. I can't believe the Vice Peak Master of Yongpeak stooped that low to come up with such an absurd lie to lure us out and capture us. Who does he think we are to fall for that? Two women clad in white hid among the bushes in a forest with a tricky terrain. They were Li Fei and Ka who had escaped from Yongpeak. Li Fei looked at the middle-aged man soaring across the sky and said in a voice filled with disdain, "Big Sister Feier, let's move on." Ka said to Li Fei after seeing the Vice Peak Master of Yongpeak leave. Li Fei agreed, and the two girls quickly flew away from Yongpeak, getting further and further away from the Yin-Yang sect. Sometimes, fate was indeed that twisted and convoluted. If it had been Duan Lingtian or Shang Quan instead of the Vice Peak Master of Yongpeak searching for Li Fei and Kair in this region, they would have been already successfully reunited with Duan Lingtian. After the two girls left, Duan Lingtian and the rest continued to comb the area. However, they did not search in the area where the others had already explored before, leading to Duan Lingtian missing the opportunity to find the both of them. They continued their search till dusk, but all they got was dust. "Young master, it seems that both young mistresses have already left," Shang Quan exclaimed after everyone converged. Duan Lingtian's eyes gleamed, and his face showed signs of melancholy. He then murmured, "I thought I'd be reunited with the both of them this time, I couldn't have guessed such a sudden change would occur." "Master, we will find both the liege ladies." It was a rare scene of the gold thug consoling Duan Lingtian. "That's right." Feng Tianwu nodded in agreement with what the gold thug said. "Your Excellency, please accept our request and become the sect leader of the Yin-Yang sect. Everyone in the Yin-Yang sect will do your bidding as long as you become the sect leader. It'll also be an easy task finding both your fiancés at that point." The guardian elder of Yongpeak looked upon Duan Lingtian and encouraged him further as if it was imperative that he became the sect leader of the Yin-Yang sect. "He's right." The two Vice Peak Masters of Yongpeak nodded in agreement with what the guardian elder said. Duan Lingtian raised his eyebrow and fell into deep thought. The reason these three senior officials of Yongpeak wanted him to become the sect leader of the Yin-Yang sect was to salvage and protect whatever remained of the sect. As a first-rate force in the inner land, the Yin-Yang sect had many powerhouses to keep it safe and prevent enemies from targeting them. However, because they were a first-rate force, the Yin-Yang sect would have made many foes in their days. Among them, there might be other first-rate forces as well. If those first-rate forces knew about the condition the Yin-Yang sect was currently in, they would send their powerhouse and eliminate the Yin-Yang sect from this world as soon as they found out. "Young master, I think that this old man has a point." Shang Quan looked towards Duan Lingtian and said using voice transmission, "The efficiency of the whole of the Yin-Yang sect finding the two young mistresses is definitely higher than us looking for them by ourselves. Of course, even if young master decides against becoming the sect leader of the Yin-Yang sect, you could still coerce the remaining senior officials of the sect to send out people in search of our two young mistresses by force. However, then, I'm afraid they won't be as motivated in the search," Shang Quan expressed to Duan Lingtian. After listening to Shang Quan's voice transmission, Duan Lingtian nodded faintly and finally looked towards the three senior officials of the Yin-Yang sect who were staring at him burning gazes. "I agree to your request to become the sect leader of the Yin-Yang sect." "Greetings, sect leader." As soon as Duan Lingtian finished his sentence, the two Vice Peak Masters immediately bowed and greeted Duan Lingtian with a pleasantly surprised look on their faces. The guardian elder of Yongpeak also lowered his head to acknowledge Duan Lingtian. However, deep in his eyes, one could pick up the satisfaction that his scheme had been successful. "Don't be in a hurry to make me your sect leader. I have a necessary condition that all of you must agree to before I agree to become your sect leader," Duan Lingtian calmly said. "Please state your condition, sect leader," the two Vice Peak Masters of Yongpeak requested with a curious look as they wondered what condition would this purple-clad youth request. Even the guardian elder's gaze towards Duan Lingtian contained some doubt and hesitation, not knowing what sort of condition Duan Lingtian would request. The Yin-Yang sect must be renamed. There was a glint in Duan Lingtian's eyes as his purple robe started to billow without any wind. Duan Lingtian seemed to have an impressive demeanor and extraordinary temperament, unlike the average Joe. "A change in our name." The three senior officials of the Yin-Yang sect were stunned after listening to Duan Lingtian's condition, and they were unable to respond in time. After they caught their breaths, both the Vice Peak Masters' brows furrowed as they felt the condition was too harsh. The name, Yin-Yang sect, was not as simple as merely a sect name. The Yin-Yang sect had been inherited for several thousands of years, and it was the accumulation of their history. If the Yin-Yang sect was renamed, that was an indication that the Yin-Yang sect had indeed become history. No one would remember that there had ever been a sect called Yin-Yang sect after several hundred years. We will accept it. The guardian elder of Yang Peak already nodded in agreement, although the two Vice Peak Masters were still hesitating. Elder Yun. The faces of both the Vice Peak Masters of Yang Peak turned aghast with disbelief. They could not imagine that the guardian elder would have agreed to such a condition so soon. The fact was, once the Yin-Yang sect changed its name, that meant that it was the end of the sect. From then on, they would no longer be members of the Yin-Yang sect. The old man understood what was running through the Vice Peak Master's mind, and he said with a voice filled with disdain, "The Yin-Yang sect will perish in the hands of our enemies in the near future even if we maintain the name. At that time, all the Yin-Yang sect disciples will perish along as well. Is that the ending you want?" Quote, renaming the Yin-Yang sect will save the disciples of the sect along with its foundation and heritage. The old man looked at the two Vice Peak Masters with a pair of cold, calm eyes. The latter then became silent. They understood that the old man was right, but they could not accept the fact at the moment. They had lived there all their lives, and they had already deemed the Yin-Yang sect as home, and now, their home was going to be gone, it was becoming history. "We agree to it as well." The two of them gnashed their teeth and finally agreed as well. "Sect leader, since you plan to rename the sect, it will require a new name in the future. I don't know if you have any ideas or inclination on what the new name will be, sect leader." The old man looked at Duan Ling Tian and asked. "Ling, Tian, sect." Duan Ling Tian focused and enunciated word for word. At the same time, his purple robe swayed without any wind as if agreeing with what he just said. Ling Tian sect. The eyes of everyone present brightened after hearing what Duan Ling Tian uttered. "Great name." Shang Quan was the first to exclaim. "It's the same name as Master. How domineering," the gold thug said to flatter Duan Ling Tian at the same time. "Ling Tian, it also means standing above the sky. This is definitely a domineering name." The two Vice Peak Masters of Yang Peak nodded in agreement. "Sect leader, is the name the same as yours?" The guardian elder of Yang Peak looked at Duan Ling Tian and asked curiously as his eyes flashed. "Master's first name is Duan, last name Ling Tian." The gold thug answered the guardian elder of Yang Peak before Duan Ling Tian even opened his mouth. Ling Tian sect, the guardian elder of Yang Peak, Yun Gang, reporting to sect leader. The guardian elder of Yang Peak bowed and paid his respects to Duan Ling Tian, kowtowing at the first available opportunity. He looked humble, modest, and frank. Ling Tian sect, Vice Peak Masters of Yang Peak, Yu Ping and Yuan, reporting to sect leader. Soon, the two Vice Peak Masters of Yang Peak followed Yun Gang's lead and bowed respectfully towards Duan Ling Tian. Yu Ping, Yuan. Duan Ling Tian looked at the two persons in front of him. They were an old man and a middle-aged man. "Are the both of you brothers?" "Yes, sect leader." The old man nodded. "I'm Yu Ping, the elder sibling. I'm older than Yuan by 13 years. However, Yuan is more talented than me in cultivation as he is just as powerful as I am, albeit being 13 years younger." "Sect leader, I'm Yuan," the middle-aged man introduced respectfully. "I will remember that." Duan Ling Tian nodded and shifted his gaze towards Yang Peak afar and said, "I don't know when the volcanic eruption in Yang Peak will stop. For the time being, Yang Peak is inhospitable. The three of you will gather everyone in Yang Peak and accommodate all of them in Yin Peak. Yang Peak will cease to exist from now on. In addition to that, Yin Peak will be known as Ling Tian Peak from now on," Duan Ling Tian said in a crisp voice. "Yes," Yun Gang and the Yu brothers replied respectfully immediately after Duan Ling Tian finished. Then, they hurried towards Yang Peak to gather the disciples there who were in a mess. There would no longer be any difference between the disciples of Yang Peak and Yin Peak in the future. There were only disciples of Ling Tian sect. Ling Tian sect, the renamed Yin Yang sect, had officially stepped into the center stage of the Cloud Continent's history, merging the people of the inner land with Duan Ling Tian as the first sect leader of Ling Tian sect. Congratulations, young master, on becoming the sect leader of Ling Tian sect. With the heritage inheritance of the Yin Yang sect and young master's strength, Ling Tian sect will be a first-rate force immediately after emerging in the central area of the Cloud Continent. Shang Quan congratulated Duan Ling Tian. "Congratulations, master." The gold thug also congratulated Duan Ling Tian, at the same time bootlicking him. "Master, under your leadership, Ling Tian sect will create immortal legends in the future, not to mention overshadowing the two ancient clans. overshadowing the two ancient clans. Duan Lingtian stared intently at the gold thug after hearing what he said. Or else, how about I send you to the two ancient clans as a representative of the Lingtian sect to show off our strengths? The gold thug could not believe that his bootlicking had failed. He laughed awkwardly and forced a charming smile. I believe you're able to accomplish it in the future, the gold thug said very confidently of Duan Lingtian. Tian Wu, let's go over as well, Lingtian peeks over there. Duan Lingtian ignored the gold thug and invited Feng Tian Wu to start out. Both of them then made their way to Lingtian Peak. Chapter 1153. The original Yin Peak, currently known as Lingtian Peak, was a snow-capped peak all year round. The peak was steep, and the snow on top looked like a layer of silver from a distance. Duan Lingtian and Feng Tian Wu took the lead with the gold thug and Shang Quan closely following them. The four of them quickly arrived at the summit of Lingtian Peak. Along the way, it was apparent that Lingtian Peak was not peaceful. Women in white were standing everywhere in groups of 3 to 5 and kept discussing as they glanced nervously at the burning peak from a distance. Yang Peak has been burning for a day. I heard that Yang Peak is now covered with lava. The place for the disciples of Yang Peak to cultivate has been completely destroyed. What about the disciples of Yang Peak after that? Will they come and fight for a place for cultivation on Yin Peak? These white-clad women were originally the disciples of Yin Peak of the Yin-Yang sect. All of them were discussing among themselves, afraid that the disciples of Yang Peak would come and snatch their cultivation place on Yin Peak. For now, they still did not know that the Yin-Yang sect had ceased to exist and had been replaced by the Lingtian sect. Now, they were disciples of the Lingtian sect, and the peak they were situated at, originally called Yin Peak, had been renamed as Lingtian Peak in accordance to the instructions of the current sect leader of the Lingtian sect. Duan Lingtian and the 3 others quickly arrived at the summit of Yin Peak. They stood in the air, the clouds, as if they were waiting for something. Time passed quietly. Half an hour later, they still haven't arrived. The gold thug couldn't help but frown as he gazed in the direction of the burning peak from a distance. How inefficient can the 3 of them be? They dared to let Master wait for such a long time. After the gold thug finished his sentence, Duan Lingtian's face brightened as if he had noticed something coming. Soon after that, Feng Tian Wu, the gold thug, and Shang Quan could see that a group of people was coming from the direction of the burning peak. 3 persons led these people. Although they were far away, they could still see it clearly with their extraordinary eyesight due to the existence of their martial monarch stage. I'm at the summit, Duan Lingtian spoke promptly when he saw the group of people stop midair outside of Lingtian Peak as if they did not know where to go. Duan Lingtian's voice contained origin energy, and therefore, even though it did not seem to be loud, everyone around Lingtian Peak could hear it clearly. Who's speaking? Such strong cultivation base. Is he really at the summit? If he's really talking from the summit, judging by our location, I think everyone around Yin Peak would have heard his voice. Duan Lingtian's voice shocked several of the female disciples from Yin Peak. I'm the guardian elder of Yang Peak, Yun Gang. Everyone from Yin Peak, listen up. Everyone must gather at the summit of Yin Peak. Those who aren't present within half an hour will be driven out of the sect regardless of status nor position. While a group of female disciples from Yin Peak was shocked by Duan Lingtian's voice, another voice rang into everyone's ears. Those who fail to reach the summit within half an hour will be driven out of the sect. It is indeed the voice of Elder Yun of the Yang Peak. Elder Yun is the guardian elder of Yang Peak, whose strength is no weaker than both of the peak masters of the Yin-Yang sect. In addition to that, he's the junior uncle of the peak master of Yang Peak, who was highly respected by the latter. We'd better hurry up and go to the summit since he asked. Move, let's go to the summit. I don't know what's going on today that they'd ask us all to gather at the summit. If I'm not mistaken, it's probably to announce that the disciples of Yang Peak will be included in our Yin Peak. After all, they're now homeless. After all of the female disciples of Yin Peak heard Yun Gang's voice, they did not dare to hesitate and rushed to the summit one after another. Elder Yun, after something like that has happened to the Yang Peak, the person who leads us should be Peak Master Yang Hong. Why did Elder Yun come personally? Usually, Elder Yun isn't such a high-profile person. A lot of elders of Yin Peak also heard Yun Gang's voice. Compared to the female disciples of Yin Peak, they knew better about Yun Gang's lofty status in the Yin-Yang sect. Therefore, they did not dare to delay and headed to the summit in the first instance. Halfway up the hill, several figures were standing in the air. They were females, some were old women while some were middle-aged. Su, A figure shot out from halfway uphill, then the figures standing in the air recovered from their shock. They bowed and saluted at the incoming person. Vice Peak Master Luo. The person who had appeared before them was an elegant, graceful woman clad in a white robe with silver hems. When she stood there, she projected a powerful aura. It was the Vice Peak Master of Yin Peak, Luo Ping. Facing their salute, Luo Ping nodded lightly. However, there was a bit of confusion between her eyebrows. Vice Peak Master Luo, did Elder Yun ask all of us to go to the summit to announce to us about people from Yang Peak joining our Yin Peak? An old woman looked at Luo Ping and asked. I also don't know. Luo Ping shook her head. If they really wanted to come to Yin Peak, how would we have so many cultivation spots to accommodate them? A middle-aged woman said with a gloomy expression. If there isn't enough place for cultivation, they can discover on their own. We're of the same line in the Yin-Yang sect. We can't not do anything to save them. Besides, we'll discuss it further when we arrive at the summit. After Luo Ping finished talking, she led the way and headed towards the summit. Sigh, nowadays, our Yin Peak is left with Vice Peak Master Luo to manage it alone. Compared with Yang Peak, which has a Peak Master, a Guardian Elder, and 2 Vice Peak Masters, Yin Peak is absolutely at a disadvantage. The few of them caught up with Luo Ping. However, some of them could not help but shake their heads and sigh. It seems like the people from Yang Peak joining Yin Peak today is a matter of course, which is inevitable, someone else added. The original Yin Peak Summit, which was the current Lingtian Peak Summit, was soon filled with people, and the number of people was continually increasing. It was quickly packed with a dense crowd. These are all our Lingtian sect people. Shang Quan's eyes gleamed as he looked at the packed crowd before him. The sect leader of Lingtian sect was his young master, which was why he had positioned himself as one of the members of Lingtian sect. The first group of people who appeared on Lingtian Peak Summit was a group of women in white. These women were of different ages. There were old women, middle-aged women, youthful women, and even some young girls. They were originally disciples of Yin Peak of the Yin-Yang sect. That Yun Gang can get things done after all. Having witnessed Yun Gang move all of the female disciples of Lingtian Peak with just a single phrase, Duan Lingtian was very satisfied with his efficiency. Shortly after, as the number of people kept growing at the summit of Lingtian Peak, Yun Gang, Yu Ping, and Yuan arrived at the summit with a mighty group of Yang Peak disciples. Many of the disciples of Yang Peak were downcast. Their cultivation place was gone. It's Elder Yun. Yun Gang's appearance caused a commotion. After all, he was the guardian elder of Yang Peak, whose strength was no weaker than the Peak Master of Yang Peak. Many female disciples from Yin Peak were excited to see him as if they were on fire. Both of the Vice Peak Masters of Yang Peak are here too. Why don't we see the Peak Master of Yang Peak, Yang Hong? After a while, some of them looked around and felt puzzled because they could not find Yang Hong. Yes, where's Peak Master Yang Hong? Why didn't he come soon? Someone else questioned. Not only is Peak Master Yang Hong absent, but even his son, Yang Fei, isn't around too. Besides, Yang Shui, junior sister Li Fei, and Ka are also nowhere to be found. It's been almost half an hour. According to Elder Yun, they'll be driven out of the sect if they're still not here. HNG. It would be to everyone's satisfaction if Yang Hong and his son were driven out of the sect. They took advantage of the time when Peak Master and Vice Peak Master Hua were in closed-door cultivation to heal their injuries, and they threatened junior sister Ka with junior sister Li Fei. Only they can do that. We still haven't seen senior sister Yang Shui. A group of female disciples from Yin Peak was discussing among themselves, and rather quickly, someone realized that Yang Hong and his son along with Yang Shui, Li Fei, and Ka were still absent. Elder Yun, Vice Peak Masters Yu. Soon, a neutral voice that did not contain any emotion was heard, catching the attention of most of those present. An elegant woman was leading a group of old and middle-aged women. She saw the 3 persons who stood in front of the disciples of Yang Peak at a distance and greeted them. Vice Peak Master Luo. The eyes of Yun Gang and the 2 others flickered when they saw the woman. The woman before them was the highest person in charge of Yin Peak, Vice Peak Master of Yin Peak, Luo Ping. Elder Yun, where's Peak Master of Yang Peak? Luo Ping looked at Yun Gang and asked bluntly. There was a glint in her eyes as coldness flashed in their depths. Yang Peak Master is dead, Yun Gang said. As soon as Yun Gang finished his statement, not only were Luo Ping and the Yin Peak elders behind her were dumbstruck. In fact, even the rest of the people from Yin Peak and the group of people from Yang Peak behind Yun Gang and the Yu brothers were dumbstruck too. Yang Peak Master was dead. The peak master of Yang Peak from the Yin-Yang sect, one of the 4 strongest martial monarch powerhouses of the Yin-Yang sect, was dead. Elder Yun, you're not kidding me, are you? Even though the Yang Peak was covered with lava, it shouldn't be hard for Peak Master Yang to escape with his cultivation base. Luo Ping looked at Yun Gang and asked. She apparently did not believe that the Peak Master of Yang Peak, Yang Hong, was dead. At once, everyone from Yin Peak also stared at Yun Gang. As for those from Yang Peak, everyone apart from the 2 Vice Peak Masters of Yang Peak, Yu Ping and Yuan, also looked at Yun Gang. All of them wanted to hear Yun Gang's reply. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Yun Gang said calmly, the death of our Peak Master of Yang Peak has nothing to do with the lava, he was killed by someone else. Was he killed? After Yun Gang said that, the faces of everyone present changed apart from Yun Gang himself, the Yu brothers beside him, Duan Lingtian and the 3 others who were hidden above the clouds. The Peak Master of Yang Peak, Yang Hong, was one of the 4 strongest beings that existed in the Yin-Yang sect. In terms of strength, no one in Yin-Yang sect would be able to kill him. Now, that had been tested and proven wrong. Did that mean the person who killed him was stronger than all the powerhouses in the Yin-Yang sect? Who killed him? Luo Ping asked with a dumbstruck expression as soon as she recovered. Chapter 1154. When Luo Ping questioned him with almost everyone at the summit watching Yun Gang, a calm voice came from the sky above. I killed him. Who's that? Instantly, everyone including Luo Ping had a change in their expressions. They did not expect someone to be hiding in the sky above them. When they looked up, they only saw a purple figure descending from the sky, followed by 3 figures behind. However, everyone's eyes were fixated on the leading purple figure. They had selectively ignored the other 3. The purple figure was a young man who looked around 25 years of age with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, and he was clad in a purple robe. He was rather handsome and dapper. As soon as he appeared, the eyes of quite a few young female disciples from Yin Peak lit up as their hearts longed for love. However, the most significant doubt in their minds now was the identity of that handsome, purple-clad youth. The person who had responded to Vice Peak Master Luo seemed to be him. Did he just say that he killed Peak Master Yang Hong? Many female disciples of Yin Peak were dumbstruck. At his age, it seems to be unlikely. A lot of them doubted it. Age, what can one's age represent? Perhaps, he's a demon. There were also some Yin Peak's female disciples who did not think so. Luo Ping's eyes were focused on the purple-clad youth who had descended from the sky. Without knowing why, she actually felt a hint of danger when she looked at the man with a vacant expression. As a woman, in addition to being the Vice Peak Master of Yin Peak of the Yin-Yang sect, she actually had a stronger intuition compared to an ordinary woman. Her instincts told her that this purple-clad youth was not that innocent. Maybe Peak Master Yang Hong really did die in his hands. When everyone was looking confusedly at Duan Lingtian, wondering about his identity and questioning whether he was capable of killing Peak Master Yang Hong of Yang Peak, Yun Gang and the Yu brothers beside him took 2 steps forward and bowed respectfully to Duan Lingtian. Sect leader. Sect leader. At first, when Yun Gang and the Yu brothers had advanced 2 steps forward with great momentum, it drew the attention of many people including the Yang Peak disciples. They thought that the 3 of them were going to attack the purple-clad youth. However, they never imagined that after the 3 of them took 2 steps forward, not only did they not attack the purple-clad youth who had descended from the sky, but they had even bowed to him and honored him as the sect leader. Whoa! In any case, the actions of Yun Gang and the Yu brothers stirred up a commotion. Everyone present including Luo Ping as well as the rest of the elders of Yin Peak and Yang Peak were shocked. Did Elder Yun and both of the Vice Peak Masters of Yang Peak just address the purple-clad youth as sect leader? A female disciple from Yin Peak gulped and asked hesitantly. Seems like it. The other female disciple beside her nodded. We, the Yin-Yang sect, seldom have a sect leader. Today, Yun Gang elder starts by saying that Peak Master Yang Hong was killed and then addresses him as the sect leader. Could it be that he wanted to be our sect leader of the Yin-Yang sect? Even if he's strong, he did kill Peak Master Yang Hong, our Peak Master of Yang Peak. Someone like that wouldn't be suitable to be our sect leader, would he? If he were really so strong, he could force us to make him the sect leader by force, then what can we do? The people present were discussing among themselves with a bit more bleakness in their tone as they spoke. After all, it was the Cloud Continent where the strong were revered. As long as one was strong enough, they could do whatever they liked. In fact, they could still be the sect leader of a sect after killing the senior officials of the said sect. I'm Duan Lingtian. While everyone was talking about him and sizing him up with funny looks, Duan Lingtian opened his mouth and spoke in a thunderous voice. Everyone present heard him like thunder piercing their ears. I recognized this voice. Wasn't it the voice that spread all around Yin Peak? Soon, a lot of them recognized Duan Lingtian's voice. I'm at the summit. They still remembered that the voice had just uttered a short and confusing phrase back then, and after that, the guardian elder of Yang Peak, Yun Gang, sounded on time. He had asked everyone to gather at the summit of Yin Peak and brought all of the elders of Yang Peaks and disciples along with both vice peak masters. Maybe all of you think my name is unfamiliar. What about the names Ka and Li Fei? Are they familiar to you? Duan Lingtian continued saying. Ka, Li Fei. After Duan Lingtian finished his sentence, the scene descended into a short silence, but moments later it became noisy. He knows Ka and Li Fei. Luo Ping's gaze towards Duan Lingtian softened. She was the junior sister who happened to be close to the other vice peak master of Yin Peak, Hua Ying, who was also the master of both Ka and Li Fei. Not too long ago, Li Fei had been captured, and Ka was forced to marry the son of the peak master of Yang Peak. She had personally gone to reason with the peak master of Yang Peak, Yang Hong, but she was chased out. In addition to that, Yang Hong had threatened her that if she dared to interfere, he would break into Yin Peak's forbidden area and kill both the peak master of Yin Peak and her senior sister Hua Ying. She was weaker than Yang Hong, and taking both the recovering senior officials who were in closed-door cultivation into account, she chose to be patient. Honestly, when she heard that Yang Hong was dead, the only feeling in her heart was joy. He knows junior sister Ka and junior sister Li Fei. Who is he? Besides, where are junior sisters Ka and junior sister Li Fei, junior sister? Why haven't we seen them? Not only are junior sister Ka and junior sister Li Fei absent, even senior sister Yang Shui isn't here. Many of the female disciples from Yin Peak were looking around, trying to find Ka, Li Fei, and Yang Shui, but they were nowhere to be seen. Ka, wasn't she the female disciple who was forced by the peak master to marry junior brother Yang Fei? Also that Li Fei, peak master, imprisoned her to threaten Ka. A lot of people were dissatisfied about that, including me. Nevertheless, words of people with a lowly position don't matter. The reason he killed the peak master was related to Ka and Li Fei. Many male disciples from Yang Peak were chatting about it. As they spoke, all their eyes landed on Duan Lingtian. They were filled with doubts and expectations. I remember now. At that moment, a disciple from Yin Peak shouted. It alerted many people and attracted a lot of attention. The female disciple from Yin Peak said in excitement when she saw the attention on her, I've heard senior sister Yang Shui mention the name of junior sister Ka and junior sister Li Fei's fiancé. Their fiancé was called Duan Lingtian. Whoa! After the female disciple blurted this out, the people around her were in an uproar. The fact that Ka and Li Fei had a fiancé and that the both of them served him was not rare to those from Yin Peak. However, most people did not know the name of their fiancé. After the revelation, they finally reacted. So, he's the fiancé of junior sister Ka and junior sister Li Fei. Does this mean that he came to our Yin Yang sect for junior sister Ka and junior sister Li Fei? I never expected junior sister Ka and junior sister Li Fei's fiancé to be so strong that he can even kill peak master Yang Hong and make elder Yun and both the vice peak masters of Yang Peak to submit to him. I used to wonder, knowing junior sister Ka and junior sister Li Fei, any one of them was enough to find an extremely outstanding man, so why would they share a husband? Now, I finally understand. Such an outstanding man, I'd be willing to share with others too if it were up to me. You, please look in a mirror. Do you think junior sister Ka and junior sister Li Fei's man would ever fall for you? A group of female disciples from Yin Peak was discussing among themselves as their gaze landed on Duan Lingtian in unison. Needless to say, they were looking at Duan Lingtian fawningly. Soon, the news that Duan Lingtian was the fiancé of Ka and Li Fei spread all over the summit. That's right, I'm Ka and Li Fei's fiancé. At that moment, Duan Lingtian opened his mouth again and admitted. At once, the summit quietened again. The reason I came this time was to take both of my fiancés away from the Yin-Yang sect. I never expected so many changes and incidents. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Duan Lingtian spoke slowly and made a dramatic pause. As for what happened exactly, Yu Ping, you'll do the talking. Duan Lingtian looked at the older of the Yu brothers, who was also one of the vice peak masters of Yang Peak. Originally, Duan Lingtian wanted to let Yun Gang speak. However, without knowing why, he felt a little uncomfortable when he glanced at Yun Gang. It was the keen instinct that had been cultivated in his past life from being in the special forces. His instincts told him that Yun Gang was a complicated person, he was not that simple and trustworthy. Yes, under the eyes of Yun Gang, whose face was slightly glum, Yu Ping stepped forward and caught everyone's attention. In the beginning, Yu Ping told them about the incident whereby Duan Lingtian's sword tore through Yang Peak and caused a volcanic eruption. For a time, there was another row amongst the people present. They never expected that the scarily young purple-clad youth was so fierce. Furious over his fiancées, he had torn Yang Peak apart with his sword. What pride! However, while a few people blamed Duan Lingtian for that disaster, most of the blame was put on the dead peak master of Yang Peak, Yang Hong. After all, the disaster happened because Yang Hong had forced his fiancée to marry his son. Otherwise, why would someone attack Yang Peak? Were they too bored? As for those disciples of Yang Peak who had died because of the volcanic eruption, they were undoubtedly indirectly killed by Yang Hong. Then, Yang Peak was completely covered in lava. Elder Yun, Yuan, and I arrived at the summit of Yang Peak in the first instance, Yu Ping continued. After we arrived, Yang Hong and his son followed suit. That was the moment our sect leader appeared. When he said that, Yu Ping looked at Duan Lingtian. Chapter 1155 Chapter 1156, Sect Leader, Duan Lingtian. After that, Yu Ping explained what happened later. He did not even miss out the part where Yang Hong, the peak master of Yang Peak, had personally admitted to breaking into the forbidden area of Yin Peak and killed the peak master and vice peak master of Yin Peak. Upon hearing that, everyone present including the male disciples of Yang Peak gasped. They never thought that their peak master of Yang Peak, Yang Hong, had been so ambitious. He even wanted to be the first sect leader of the Yin-Yang sect within hundreds of years. For that, he even took advantage and killed the two most influential persons of Yin Peak when they were in closed-door cultivation to heal their injuries. Doing so was the equivalent to destroying the pillars that held up Yin Peak. He's heartless and mad. He's absolutely heartless and mad. All of the disciples of Yin Peak were enraged when they learned that Yang Hong had killed two of their peak masters for his own gains. Senior sister. Luo Ping trembled as her eyes became bloodshot instantly. She disappeared in the next moment, apparently headed to verify the truth at the forbidden area of Yin Peak. That's unfortunate for senior sister Yang Shui. Yang Hong killed her just like that. Senior sister Yang Shui was so outstanding, yet she ended up dead. What a pity. Without knowing when, one after another, the gazes of the female disciples of Yin Peak flew past Duan Lingtian and landed behind him in Shang Quan's arms. There was a woman clad in white, who had been dead for a while, in Shang Quan's arms. The woman had a whole head of white hair that was whiter than snow, but her white robe was mostly stained by blood which made it glaring and heart-stopping. It was Yang Shui. I didn't expect that the Peak Master could bear to kill someone as pitiful as senior sister Yang Shui, one of the Yang Peak male disciples said indignantly. You still call him Peak Master now? If I had to say something, that Yang Hong was an animal. Like father like son, his son was also an animal. Right, both of them, father and son, were animals. Many of the male disciples of Yang Peak also insisted indignantly. Yang Shui was the strongest person among the younger generation of Yin Peak. She was considered the dream lover of all of the Yang Peak male disciples with her shocking innate talent and comprehension in addition to her drop-dead gorgeous face. Now, they were naturally incensed when they learned that Yang Hong had killed their dream lover. Shortly after, Luo Ping returned, catching everyone's attention right away. At once, the scene became silent. Thank you. Although there was grief on Luo Ping's face, when she looked at Duan Lingtian to bow and thank him, her tone was filled with sincerity. She thanked Duan Lingtian for avenging Yin Peak as well as for avenging her senior sister and junior niece. Witnessing Luo Ping's actions, everyone knew that everything Yu Ping said was true. None of it was false. Everyone's tempers rose. At that time, Yu Ping looked at Duan Lingtian and introduced Luo Ping. Vice Peak Master Luo was the junior sister of Yang Shui's master. Oh, so she turns out to be a junior uncle. Duan Lingtian's eyes gleamed as he nodded at Luo Ping. Yang Shui's master was also master to Ka and Li Fei. As such, that elegant woman before him was also Ka and Li Fei's junior uncle. He was the fiancé of the both of them, so naturally, he had to address her as the both of them did, which was junior uncle. The four strongest powerhouses of Yin-Yang sect are all gone apart from Elder Yun, I believe that everyone can guess the crisis the Yin-Yang sect faces subsequently. Yu Ping continued speaking with a dignified expression. For that reason, Elder Yuan, and I have brazenly asked this one to be the sect leader of our Yin-Yang sect. Having said that, Yu Ping turned to Duan Lingtian. At once, Duan Lingtian became the center of attention again. Then, everyone present also came to their senses and understood why Elder Yun and both the vice peak masters of the Yang Peak had addressed Duan Lingtian as sect leader. Luo Ping, vice peak master of Yin Peak. Greetings to you, sect leader. Luo Ping bowed at Duan Lingtian again, but this time it was not to thank him. It was to honor Duan Lingtian as sect leader. In addition to being a powerhouse that could kill Yang Hong and protect the Yin-Yang sect, Duan Lingtian was also the fiancé of both her junior nieces. Compared to Elder Yun and both the vice peak masters of the Yang Peak, her relationship with Duan Lingtian was closer. Therefore, she naturally would not reject Duan Lingtian as the sect leader of the Yin-Yang sect. Greetings, just as the rest of the elders and disciples of Yin Peak and Yang Peak were prepared to honor Duan Lingtian as the sect leader, Duan Lingtian interrupted them. Wait a minute. They looked puzzled. In fact, Luo Ping was also surprised. She did not know what Duan Lingtian wanted to do. Only Yun Gang and the Yu brothers were as calm as before. They could already guess what Duan Lingtian wanted to say next. You can honor me as your sect leader. However, I must tell you something first. That's, after I become the sect leader of the Yin-Yang sect, the sect will be renamed as the Lingtian sect. This means that the Yin-Yang sect will no longer exist, Duan Lingtian explained to the crowd in front of him. Those who can't accept it may leave now. Lingtian sect won't make you stay forcefully. Renaming the sect, there was an uproar. The Yin-Yang sect will be renamed. It's okay to rename it. In fact, I think the new sect name sounds better. It's more domineering. I thought so too. Lingtian sect, Lingtian as in riding above the heavens. Soon, apart from some hesitation from the elders of Yin Peak and Yang Peak, the two groups of disciples were discussing among themselves, and they felt satisfied with the new name. Unlike those elders from Yin Peak and Yang Peak who had been in the Yin-Yang sect for many and had deep sentiments for the Yin-Yang sect, those disciples were relatively new to the sect and did not have as much affection for it. They only cared about whether they belonged to a first-rate force or not. They did not care what the sect was called. However, the hesitant elders eventually compromised because neither Elder Yun and the vice peak masters of Yang Peak nor the vice peak master of Yin Peak objected to it. Compared to the four of them, they were nothing. Since no one objects, then, from now on, I, Duan Lingtian, will be the first sect leader of the Lingtian sect. From today onwards, Yin Peak will be renamed as Lingtian Peak, Duan Lingtian announced loudly in an imposing manner which reverberated through the skies as his voice spread in all directions. Sect leader. At that second, all of the Lingtian sect disciples respectfully bowed and greeted Duan Lingtian. The atmosphere on the summit was crowded and imposing. Seeing the crowd before him, Duan Lingtian clearly knew that he had a responsibility as heavy as a mountain towards them from now on. Nevertheless, from now on, he was no longer alone. Sect leader, Yu Ping looked at Duan Lingtian and asked respectfully, now that Yang Peak is destroyed, what do you intend to do with us from Yang Peak? While Yu Ping spoke, the group of elders and disciples who was originally from Yang Peak looked at Duan Lingtian with a burning gaze. Even those from Yin Peak also studied Duan Lingtian. They were somewhat anxious, afraid that those from Yang Peak would take over their place for cultivation. I've examined the place when I came over. Only half of Lingtian Peak is developed as a place for cultivation for the female disciples, isn't it? Under those watchful eyes, Duan Lingtian spoke slowly. As he said, he turned to Luo Ping. Yes, sect leader, Luo Ping answered respectfully. Then, she explained, Lingtian Peak was covered in snow all year round, but the place for cultivation on our side still fared all right. It's on the southern side and isn't affected by the cold wind, it's freezing on the north side since it's affected by the cold wind year after year. Duan Lingtian nodded. I noticed that when I came. For that reason, I'll announce to you guys. Duan Lingtian's sight glided across the elders and disciples of Lingtian sect as he said slowly, those who were from Yin Peak, stay. Their place for cultivating will be the same. After Duan Lingtian said that, the group of Yin Peak elders and disciples smiled whereas the faces of Yang Peak elders and disciples changed. Those from Yang Peak will head to the northern side and open a new place for cultivation, Duan Lingtian continued. Sect leader, Yuan said with furrowed brows, the northern side of Lingtian Peak will be affected by the cold wind all year long. Even if we open a new place for cultivation, it'll be hard to cultivate there peacefully because of the cold wind. That's right, sect leader. A group of Yangpeak elders and disciples nodded respectively. What if I can solve the problem you've just mentioned? Ignoring the cloudy expression on the faces of the Yangpeak elders and disciples, Duan Lingtian looked at Yuan and asked. Solve. Yuan could not react in that split second. I can set up a large-scale inscription formation that covers the northern side of Lingtian Peak to defend us from all of the cold wind, Duan Lingtian said calmly. Whoa. After Duan Lingtian said that, it rocked the boat even further and caused an uproar. An inscription formation to defend the cold wind on Lingtian Peak's northern side. Could one even set up an inscription formation like that? They were very doubtful about it. There was no shortage of inscription masters amongst them, but no one had ever heard of an inscription formation with such exaggerated capabilities. Now, you, Yun Gang, and Yu Ping shall bring those from Yang Peak to the northern side of Lingtian Peak and open a new place for cultivation. I'll take, at the most, 3 days to complete that inscription formation, Duan Lingtian looked at Yuan and said. The senior officials of Yang Peak still brought the group of people from Yang Peak over to the northern side of Lingtian Peak even though they were doubtful about Duan Lingtian's promise. What they had to do was to open new places for cultivation on the hillside. I don't know if the sect leader can really set up an inscription formation like that. An inscription formation which covers half of Lingtian Peak, it feels outrageous even just thinking about it. However, the sect leader doesn't seem to be lying judging from the expression he had when he spoke about it. We'll know if he's lying or not in 3 days. The original Yangpeak elders and disciples were discussing among themselves as they followed Yungang and the 2 others. They only hoped that the next 3 days would pass quickly. Vice Peak Master Luo, stay. The others, please disperse. Duan Lingtian looked and gave his instruction to the group of female elders and disciples. Comments 2, Zalamar 1981 Zalamar 1981 Thanks. Roan 14 TNX. Chapter 1156 Chapter 1157, Preparation. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's instruction, a group of Yin Peak elders and disciples left, not daring to hesitate. Sect leader. Luo Ping looked at Duan Lingtian. Junior uncle, bring me to senior sister Yang Shui's cultivation place, I want to take her back to her place, Duan Lingtian told her. Yang Shui had died for the sake of his 2 fiancés. Because of this, without a doubt, he would not mistreat her even after she was already dead. Upon hearing this, Luo Ping's body trembled for a moment. Her gaze automatically shifted towards the person in the arms of Shang Quan behind Duan Lingtian. The white figure that was dyed with blood immediately entered her sight. Shui, how unfortunate. After a while, Luo Ping breathed a long sigh with a pitiful expression on her face. Yang Shui was the strongest person among the younger generation of the Yin Peak. Not only that, but she was also a variant. Had she not died, it would not have been impossible for her to become the next Peak Master of Yin Peak. If Shui becomes a spirit in heaven, she'd be happy to know that you treat her so well. Sect leader, Luo Ping bowed towards Duan Lingtian and said earnestly, Sect leader, I'll like to thank you on behalf of Shui. Junior uncle, what are you doing? My 2 fiancés are greatly in debt to senior sister Yang Shui, so it means that I'm in debt to her too. These are things that I should do. Duan Lingtian immediately went forward and lifted Luo Ping to her feet. Under Luo Ping's guidance, Duan Lingtian and the other 3 followed closely behind. Soon, they reached the middle of the hillside near the summit of Lingtian Peak. There was a small, established, flat platform. On the small platform stood a small wooden house that was covered in white snow. This is where Zer would usually cultivate, Luo Ping informed. Duan Lingtian nodded before descending, and he pushed open the door of the little wooden house. Just as the door was pushed open, some deposited snow fell and crashed onto Duan Lingtian's head. However, as though he did not notice it at all, he continued to walk in. The little wooden house was clean. Other than one bed, there was nothing else. It did not seem to be like a woman's room. Ever since Shui became senior sister's disciple, she focused on cultivating, and her amenities were very simple. Before Ka and Fair came, she didn't really talk much to anybody. It was only until they came to become senior sister's disciples and became her junior sisters that she started to become more chatty. Luo Ping followed Duan Lingtian into the little wooden house and added. I see, Duan Lingtian nodded. Then, with a raise of his hand, a crystal-clear ice coffin appeared in front of him. He guided it to land on the bed in the little wooden house with an invisible string. This is. Luo Ping was taken aback. Before she could realize what was happening, Duan Lingtian had already asked Shang Quan to enter and put Yang Shui into the ice coffin. When Shang Quan had just reached before the ice coffin, Duan Lingtian explained to Luo Ping, "This is an ice coffin that's made from the 10,000-year frost. It can conserve senior sister Yang Shui's body forever." This ice coffin was the one that he had explicitly carved for Feng Tianwu the last time. It was now just right for Yang Shui. By the time I find the two girls, they'll definitely wish to see senior sister Yang Shui again too, Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Wait a minute. Just as Shang Quan about to place Yang Shui into the ice coffin, Luo Ping stopped him. Perplexed, Shang Quan looked at Luo Ping. "Junior uncle, is there anything else?" Duan Lingtian also turned to Luo Ping. "Sect leader, I hope Shui can lie inside in a clean manner, give me 15 minutes please. I'll clean her up and change her clothes," Luo Ping voiced out her idea. "All right," Duan Lingtian nodded. After he had asked Shang Quan to hand Yang Shui to Luo Ping, he left with Shang Quan and closed the door behind him. It's snowing now. Just when they stepped out of the door, Duan Lingtian noticed that snow had started to fall around Lingtian Peak. The sky was dotted all over, and it was stunning. Extending a hand out, Duan Lingtian let the snow land on his palm, and he muttered, "Senior sister Yang Shui, thank you for everything that you've done for the two girls. I, Duan Lingtian, am forever indebted to you." 15 minutes quickly went by. In this period of time, the only movement that Duan Lingtian noticed was the sudden opening of the window of the little wooden house. Water spurted out from inside and there was some blood in the water. Duan Lingtian knew that this was Luo Ping using her water profundity to help clean the traces of blood from Yang Shui's body. "You can come in now." When Luo Ping's voice could be heard, Duan Lingtian walked in. This time, Shang Quan did not follow him inside. Instead, he stood outside of the wooden house with Feng Tianwu and the gold thug, waiting for Duan Lingtian to come out. Duan Lingtian walked into the wooden house, and he could instantly see that Yang Shui had already been cleaned and had a set of clean, white clothes on. She was already lying in the ice coffin. Through the ice coffin, one could see her graceful body and her ultimately beautiful features that could topple a nation. Taking a deep breath, Duan Lingtian gave 3 bows to Yang Shui's corpse before leaving with Luo Ping. "From today onwards, this will be the forbidden area of Lingtian Peak. Nobody can come here without permission," Duan Lingtian told Luo Ping. Luo Ping nodded. The next instant, as though he was still not assured, Duan Lingtian took out a pile of materials in high-grade origin stone before starting to get busy with them. He was inscribing an inscription, and he soon laid out an inscription formation. Luo Ping was utterly lost watching Duan Lingtian's fluid movements. An hour later, Duan Lingtian started to slow down. However, the materials and the origin stones in his hands swept out of his hands and merged into the ground of snow around the little wooden house. The next moment, a translucent light shield rose up and enveloped the entire little wooden house in it. After a span of not more than 20 breaths, the translucent light shield vanished before Luo Ping's eyes. Of course, she knew that the translucent light shield did not actually vanish for real. Once somebody walked closer, it would be triggered. This was the defensive light shield that was formed by a defensive formation. "Sect leader, I can't believe that not only is your power strong, but you actually have such high attainment in the inscription Dao too." Luo Ping looked at Duan Lingtian and gushed in amazement. Though she was not an inscription master, she still had some knowledge about it. She had witnessed some of the inscription masters in the sect inscribe and lay inscription formation out before. However, the speed and efficiency of these masters was not even a fraction of this purple-clad young man's. Perhaps, the sect leader can really lay out a large-scale inscription formation that can withstand the chill wind blowing from the northern side of the Lingtian Peak, Luo Ping thought to herself. Right now, all that she felt was how unfathomable this sect leader in front of her eyes was. She could not see through him at all. "Sect leader, what is the highest level of attack that this inscription formation can withstand?" Luo Ping could not suppress the question bubbling up in her. "Well, you'll need the strength of 3 ancient black dragons before you can destroy it," Duan Lingtian replied. "The strength of 3 ancient black dragons?" The moment Luo Ping heard him, her eyes narrowed right away. Usually, only a martial artist who was on the 7th level martial monarch stage and above could cast the strength of 3 ancient black dragons and more. In other words, it would be impossible for a martial artist who was weaker than the 7th level martial monarch stage to break the defensive inscription that covered the little wooden house in front of her. It had never crossed her mind that the inscription formation that was laid out by this person in front in just an hour could actually have such a horrifying defensive force. It absolutely exceeded her imagination. Junior uncle, I might need some materials that I can use to inscribe and lay out the inscription formations in these 2 days, Duan Lingtian told Luo Ping. In the next 2 days, he would start to lay out a large-scale inscription formation that could envelop the northern side of the Lingtian peak. However, he did not have some of the materials that he needed to make that inscription formation. Just let me know if you anything, sect leader. I'll go to Lingtian Peak to search for the things that you want in the storehouse, Luo Ping replied. She originally wanted to say, Yin Peak, but suddenly remembered that it had already been renamed to become Lingtian Peak before she could finish uttering the word. It was the same name as the sect leaders. Thank you, junior uncle. Duan Lingtian smiled, taking Luo Ping by surprise so much that she immediately bowed in return. She was very clear that the reason Duan Lingtian had called her junior uncle was for the sake of his 2 fiancés. Otherwise, she was basically nothing to him. Then, under the arrangement of Luo Ping, Duan Lingtian and the other 3 stayed behind at Lingtian Peak. Each of them had a wooden house close to each other in the middle of the hillside. Feng Tianwu, Shang Quan, and the gold thug returned to their rooms in an instant and buried themselves in cultivation. As for Duan Lingtian, he did not have any time to cultivate yet for now. Instead, he was busy inscribing the materials and high-grade origin stones that he already had in hand, scrawling the necessary inscriptions on them. Everything that he was doing now was for the sake of preparing for the large-scale inscription formation that he was going to lay out in the next 2 days. The inscription formation could also be considered as a defensive inscription, but it could only withstand the invasion from the chill wind. Initially, such a defensive formation was only a simple inscription formation and could be laid out very quickly. However, the problem was that the defensive formation that Duan Lingtian wanted to inscribe was one that would envelop the entire northern side of the Lingtian peak. The area was so vast that it would stretch out as far as eyes could see. Had he not merged with the rebirth martial emperor's memory, he would never have been able to lay out such a large-scale inscription formation. This was because the rebirth martial emperor had experimented on and formed such a large-scale inscription formation the last time. Even if an ordinary inscription formation could include the same one, he would never be able to create such a large one. All in all, it all boiled down to one thing: only the rebirth martial emperor could inscribe and lay such a large one out. After Duan Lingtian had inscribed most of the materials and high-grade origin stones in his hand, Luo Ping had also finished assembling all the materials he had asked her to find without leaving even a single one out. In the next 2 days, Duan Lingtian began to get busy again. The span of 2 days went by in just a blink of an eye. After 2 days, Duan Lingtian went to the northern side of the Lingtian peak by himself, but he noticed that many male disciples were there being busy themselves. Many elders were there helping out as well. While they were busy, the robes on their bodies were flapping loudly in the piercing cold chill wind. Not only that, but some of their hair bands had also snapped because of the wind. Without any restraint now, their long hair billowed in the wind. It's the sect leader, comma. Without a doubt, Duan Lngtian's appearance immediately attracted the attention of many. However, the thing that they were most concerned about now was not Duan Lingtian himself. Tomorrow will be the 3-day deadline that sect leader told us about 2 days ago. I wonder whether sect leader can really lay out a large-scale inscription formation that can withstand the cold wind. Comments 2 Roan 14 TNX. Zalamar 1981 Thanks. Chapter 1157. In the face of the doubt of the male disciples of the Lingtian sect, Duan Lingtian did not say much. He knew that it would still be useless no matter how much positive words he put forth. Only a real-life action to fulfill his promise could shut everyone's mouths up. For this reason, Duan Lingtian began to get busy that day as well. Without a doubt, casting an inscription formation that enveloped half of Lingtian Peak would be a huge process. Even though Duan Lingtian had already scrawled the inscription on the materials and the origin stones beforehand, he still needed time to lay them out. Duan Lingtian did not even have any time to stop at all the entire day. From morning till midnight, Duan Lingtian's figure continuously flew up and down the northern side of Lingtian Peak. As he made his move, each material and every origin stone were merged into the north hillside of Lingtian Peak. The location to place these materials and origin stones had to be taken into consideration too. Even the slightest miscalculation was not allowed. Fortunately, I can set this defensive formation directly through the rebirth Martial Emperor's memory. If it were taught to me orally, I don't think I could finish setting it up even if I spent 10 days and 10 nights. After placing the last batch of materials and origin stones in the place where they should be, Duan Lingtian stopped his work and stood aside. Just like that, the defensive formation that covered half of Lingtian Peak was finished. Looking at the night sky that was covered in scarce stars, Duan Lingtian muttered before vanishing on the spot, "Right now, the only thing left is the briefing that I'll give tomorrow." When he reappeared again, he was already back to where Luo Ping had arranged for him temporarily. It was a wooden house by the middle of the hillside of the southern side of Lingtian Peak. This wooden house was much better than Yang Shui's wooden house. Not only was the area much larger, but the furniture in the house was all fully equipped as well. Sitting cross-legged on the bed, Duan Lingtian closed his eyes and started to cultivate 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique, Divine Dragon Form. Not only that, 3 nature profundity fragments were being held tightly in his hand as well for him to comprehend and raise his fused profundity. Though the aid given by the monarch stage nature profundity fragments to his fused profundity was not as far-fetched as the heavenly jewel was not something that he could easily get his hands on at all. Just like the heavenly jewel that he had obtained the last time in the berserk mongrel rodent clan, that heavenly jewel was entirely stored with nature energy. Duan Lingtian only took a month to fully absorb all of the heavenly jewel energy, which was also nature energy, stored in the heavenly jewel that had been absorbing nature energy for 100 years before it could be filled. For that reason, the heavenly jewel had also temporarily become trash. It would need to undergo another long period before it could regather the heavenly jewel energy again. However, after Duan Lingtian had finished absorbing all of the heavenly jewel energy stored inside the heavenly jewel, his fused profundity had also successfully made a breakthrough to the second level. On top of that, he could also clearly feel that when he was halfway absorbing the heavenly jewel energy in the heavenly jewel, his fused profundity had already made a breakthrough to the second level. After that, when he absorbed the other remaining half of the heavenly jewel, his fused profundity had already made further progress. In the end, it was now very close to becoming third-level fused profundity. Right now, he was only a step away from comprehending the third-level fused profundity. Just as I've guessed, be it its force, or the difficulty of leveling up, the fused profundity is on par with the Emperor profundity. After the origin energy in his body began to operate mentally according to the divine dragon form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign Technique and had started to get on track, Duan Lingtian finally was able to think of something else now. The fused profundity was formed by 5 different first-level monarch stage nature profundities. The fused profundity at that time could be deemed as the first-level fused profundity. The first-level fused profundity is equivalent to the strength of 2 ancient black dragons. This is the same with the first-level emperor stage profundity. Right now, with the help of the heavenly jewel energy, my fused profundity is further elevated and has become the second-level fused profundity. The second-level fused profundity is equivalent to the strength of 3 ancient black dragons, just like the second-level emperor stage profundity as well. From here, we can see that every time the fused profundity is raised later on, it'll have an additional strength of 1 ancient black dragon for every additional level. This was not a hard deduction. However, it has been proven that my luck is pretty good. 2 days before I arrived at the Yin-Yang sect, my cultivation has once again made a breakthrough to the 4th-level martial monarch stage. Had this not been the case, I wouldn't have been able to snatch the saber that contained Yang Hong's full force empty-handed. Unknowingly, Duan Lingtian's train of thought had started to fly. Initially, based on his estimation, he would need to wait for at least 1 to 2 months before he could make a breakthrough to the 4th-level martial monarch stage. However, it had never crossed his mind that because he was torn with anxiety along his journey, being too worried about the safety of the 2 girls, it had startled the tyrannical medicinal efficacy of the rebirth pill inside his body. You could then imagine the results. The rebirth pill's therapeutic efficacy burned further quickly and aided him to complete his breakthrough to the 4th-level martial monarch stage in one fell swoop, much earlier than he was supposed to. Having made a breakthrough to the 4th-level martial monarch stage, he could cast out the strength of 6,000 ancient horned dragons just with his origin energy alone. The strength of his 6th-level monarch stage sword profundity was equivalent to 7,000 ancient horned dragons. The 2nd-level fused profundity had a strength of 3 ancient black dragons. For this reason, without any spirit weapon, he could already cast out the strength of 4 ancient black dragons and an additional 3,000 ancient horned dragons. 2 days ago, it was precisely with this strength that he was able to snatch the grade 1 spirit saber from Yang Hong empty-handedly. If I use my quasi-royal grade spirit sword, my strength would be equivalent to 4 ancient black dragons plus an additional 9,000 ancient horned dragons. With the help of the 9 tribulation sword control technique and the 9 dragons radiant flash, I won't necessarily be defeated even if I come across a powerhouse who possesses the strength of 5 ancient black dragons. Duan Lingtian was very confident in the techniques that he had mastered. He felt that if he used all of his techniques, he could compensate for the strength difference of the mere 1,000 ancient black dragons. The energy that I possess right now can already be compared to an ordinary 9th level martial monarch stage martial artist. Of course, I'm still far from those insanely monstrous 9th level martial monarch martial artists. Through the rebirth martial emperor's memory, Duan Lingtian knew how hard it would be to make a breakthrough to the martial emperor stage for a 9th level martial monarch stage martial artist. It was more than 100 times harder than going to the martial monarch stage from the void transformation stage. If a 9th level void transformation stage martial artist comprehended 3 different 9th level void transformation concepts, or the 9th level water and fire advance concepts, it would not be hard to make a breakthrough to the martial monarch stage. However, even if a 9th level martial monarch stage martial artist had already comprehended 3 different 9th level monarch stage profundities, or the 9th level water and fire monarch stage profundities, there was still a chance to break through to the martial emperor stage. It was precisely for this reason that there were very few martial emperors in both the generations of the first and second reincarnations of the rebirth martial emperor. According to the rebirth martial emperor's memory, at that era of his second reincarnation, the strongest 9th level martial monarch stage powerhouse had comprehended 6 different 9th level monarch stage profundities. 6 types of 9th level monarch stage profundities. What the hell exactly was that? In other words, even if that powerhouse only cast his profundity strength, it was still equivalent to the power of 6 ancient black dragons. Adding his own origin energy and grade 1 spirit weapon, he could unleash a force that was far more than 8 ancient black dragons. The strength of 8 ancient black dragons, Duan Lingtian felt chills running down his spines just thinking about it. Right now, although he could cast the strength of 4 ancient black dragons and 9,000 ancient horned dragons when he unleashed his full potential, his strength was still nothing compared to the 9th level martial monarch stage powerhouse who had mastered the force of 8 ancient black dragons. It would be very quick for this guy to kill him. It would be even easier than stepping on an ant. That powerhouse has comprehended 6 types of 9th level monarch stage profundities, but he still can't make a breakthrough to the martial emperor stage. It looks like the martial emperor stage is indeed very hard to be broken through. The moment Duan Lingtian thought about this, his heart gave a jolt. At the same time, he could feel intense pressure on himself as well. According to the rebirth martial emperor's memory, when he made a breakthrough to the martial emperor stage, he had broken through it in a state of confusion. He did not even know what exactly did he rely on to make this breakthrough. That time, the rebirth martial emperor had comprehended 4 types of 9th level monarch stage profundities. During the second reincarnation, when the rebirth martial emperor had made a breakthrough to the martial emperor stage, he had not had any experience before. At first, he kept running up against walls everywhere, but in the end, he managed to make a breakthrough after he had comprehended 3 types of 9th level monarch stage profundities. I wonder whether it'll be easier for me to make a breakthrough to the martial emperor stage compared to the 2 reincarnations of the rebirth martial emperor. The moment Duan Lingtian thought of this, he became consumed with anxiety. Although he had merged with the rebirth martial emperor's memory, he still could not obtain any help in making a breakthrough to the martial emperor stage because the rebirth martial emperor himself had only managed to make a breakthrough to the martial emperor stage in a state of confusion. For this reason, he still needed to rely on himself if he wanted to make a breakthrough to the martial emperor stage. He could not rely on the memory that the rebirth martial emperor had left behind at all. I hope that I can also make a breakthrough in the state of confusion just like the rebirth martial emperor did. Duan Lingtian hoped for a dream to happen. Unknowingly, his feelings had gradually calmed down, and his entire being was now completely absorbed in cultivating and comprehending. Cultivating the 9th form of the 9 Dragons War Sovereign technique, Divine Dragon Form. Comprehending the fused profundity and grasping the sword art knowledge contained in the sword character deep in his mind left behind by the sword saint Feng Qingyang. Duan Lingtian, who had submerged himself in cultivating and comprehending, had forgotten about the time. It was only when the sunlight from the rising sun that bathed the entire earth had shone on his face through the satin curtain by the side of the wooden house that he finally had some movement and opened his eyes. It's already bright. After Duan Lingtian woke up, he walked out of the wooden house after freshening himself. The moment he walked out of the door, Duan Lingtian noticed the two figures standing there. They were none other than the two vice peak masters of the former Yang Peak, Yu Ping and Yuan. You two were here since early morning. Don't tell me that you're worried that I'd go against my words. Looking at the two anxious-looking Yu brothers, Duan Lingtian frowned, thinking that they were here for he had promised them that he would solve the issue about the chill wind by the northern side of Lingtian Peak today. Sect leader, Elder Yun is gone. As Yu Ping exclaimed in distraught, Duan Lingtian knew that he had guessed wrong. Chapter 1158, Elder Yun or Young Gang was the guardian elder of the former Yang Peak. When did you notice that he's gone? Duan Lingtian was calm and asked in a collected manner. 3 days ago, you told Elder Yun and us to bring the people to the northern side of Lingtian Peak to dig a place for cultivation, so we were temporarily separated from him. Now that we come to think about it, that was the last time we ever saw him, Yu Ping replied. Early this morning, I went to ask the elders and disciples who were with Elder Yun and they said that after Elder Yun brought them to part ways with us 3 days ago, he left by himself alone. We ran a search at the entire Lingtian Peak early this morning, but we couldn't see any trace of Elder Yun at all. Yuan added. If I'm not mistaken, he must have left 3 days ago. He left Lingtian Peak, the Lingtian sect. A brilliant gleam flashed across Duan Lingtian's eyes as he continued to ask, do you know what relationship Yun Gang has with Yang Hong? Yang Hong was the direct disciple of the previous the Peak Master of Yang Peak while Yun Gang was the junior brother of the previous the Peak Master of Yang Peak. Yang Hong called Yun Gang, senior uncle, Yu Ping answered. Duan Lingtian nodded. It looks like he has never planned to stay from the very beginning. He kept obeying me, only to make me lower my vigilance down. He's already been planning to leave a long time ago. Sect leader, what should we do then? If Yun Gang really left, would it be disadvantageous to our Lingtian Peak? Yuan asked. He's not that capable. Duan Lingtian narrowed his eyes, and a chilly gleam flashed across them. He must have left 3 days ago. It's too late to chase after him now. You two, follow me to the northern side of Lingtian Peak. The moment these words left Duan Lingtian's mouth, he vanished straight away. When he reappeared again, he was already far away. The Yu brothers reacted immediately and followed suit right away. I'll go have a look too. Right at this moment, Shang Quan had also walked out of a wooden house from the middle of the hillside not far away and followed them as well. Young Master must be going to set up the large-scale inscription formation now. Whoosh, whoosh. Just as Shang Quan made his move, another two figures vanished from two directions and followed suit. It was a woman in a red dress and a golden-clad old man. They were none other than Feng Tianwu and the Gold Thug. By the time Duan Lingtian reached the northern side of Lingtian Peak once again, he had noticed that it was already filled with many people. These people were the elders and disciples of Yang Peak of the former Yin-Yang sect. Sect leader is here, The news of Duan Lingtian arriving soon spread out among those who stood close to him. In just a moment, those people who were waiting by the entire northern side of Lingtian Peak flew towards him. In dense black clouds, they bowed from afar towards the purple-colored figure not far away. Almost everybody from the Yang Peak of the former Yin-Yang sect, except for Yun Gang, was now fully gathered here. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Aside from the Yu brothers standing behind him, 3 people soon appeared behind Duan Lingtian. They were Feng Tianwu, Shang Quan, and the Gold Thug who had followed. Whoosh, 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 A series of whistling wind reverberated, attracting the attention of everyone present on the scene. A group of women dressed in white could be seen flying towards there from the southern side of the Lingtian Peak. It was apparent that they were here to join in the fun. These women were the disciples from the former Yin Peak of the former Yin-Yang sect. Sect leader, even Luo Ping, the vice peak master of Yin Peak of the former Yin-Yang sect had now come. After respectfully greeting Duan Lingtian, she stood behind him. A series of piercingly chilly winds continued to blow across, making the robes on everybody's body, including Duan Lingtian, flutter loudly. Some people who had lower cultivation base squinted from the strong gales. I won't beat around the bush at all. Duan Lingtian cast a glance at the dense black crowds and announced in a loud voice with a solemn expression. Today, I'm going to fulfill the promise I made 3 days ago and not let the northern side of Lingtian Peak suffer from the invasion from the cold wind any longer. Fulfill the promise. The moment these words left Duan Lingtian's mouth, everybody's eyes lit up with an anticipating look on their faces. They wanted to see how this young sect leader of the Lingtian sect would set up that extremely far-fetched, large-scale inscription formation that he had mentioned. Unfortunately, they were destined never be able to see it. Swish. As Duan Lingtian raised a hand, a finger flicked out. Right away, a piece of high-grade origin stone shot out and fell into the mountain wall at the northern side of Lingtian Peak before it vanished without a trace. Whoosh! Almost when the high-grade origin stone disappeared, all the crowd could hear was a gentle sound reverberating by their ears. The voice was not loud, but it seemed as though it trembled their spirits for a moment. The next instance, under the stunned gaze of the crowds of the elders and disciples of Lingtian Peak, a layer of translucent light shield seemed to rise up from the inside of the mountain wall of the northern side and kept inflating outwards continuously. The place where the light shield went past pushed the piercing cold chill wind that blew from the northern side away. The light shield continued to expand. It was only until the light shield had covered the entire wall mountain of Lingtian Peak's northern side that it finally stopped. At the same time, it vanished before everyone's eyes as though it had never once appeared before. However, at the isolation line where the translucent light shield disappeared, the chill wind that came from the north had been wholly kept away. It could no longer make its way inside. At once, along with the disappearance of the chill wind, everyone's robes, including Duan Lingtian's, stopped fluttering. Is this even possible? Unbelievable, unbelievable. Is this the large-scale inscription formation that sect leader mentioned 3 days ago? When did he set all these up? Yesterday, many people saw the sect leader wandering around over here. He seemed to be throwing something that went through the mountain walls repeatedly, and they were all embedded in the mountain. Come to think of it, he must have been setting up the inscription formation that time. Why yesterday? Then, are you saying that it only took sect leader 1 day to set up such a large-scale inscription formation? The group of Lingtian sect disciples was completely taken aback by astonishment. Soon, they realized another problem. Their sect leader had only taken a day to set up such a large-scale inscription formation. Looks like not only is he a martial Dao powerhouse, our sect leader is also an extraordinary inscription master as well, many Lingtian sect disciples exclaimed in surprise. The young female disciples' eyes had practically formed a heart shape now as they started to ogle Duan Lingtian secretly. HMPH. However, as an extremely cold snort sounded in the air, chills ran down their spines at once. Hastily, they lowered their heads and they no longer dared to look at him. It was none other than Feng Tianwu, who was standing behind Duan Lingtian, who had snorted just now. With a cold expression, she swept a glance at this group of young disciples. As she was snorting, the aura of a martial monarch swept out and pressed the group of young disciples so firmly that they did not even dare to lift their heads. The actions of Feng Tianwu now was like trying to tell everybody that she was the one who had absolute sovereign rights over Duan Lingtian. Is she Mrs. Sect Leader? I think so, otherwise, she wouldn't be so pissed at us looking at the sect leader. Mrs. Sect Leader is quite powerful herself. It looks like we can only sigh at the sight of sect leader next time. The group of young female disciples whispered among themselves secretly. Though their voices were not particularly loud, most of the people present on the scene were people with high attainment. For this reason, they had amazing hearing abilities and without missing anything at all, they could hear the whispers of these girls clearly. Mrs. Sect Leader. At once, most of the people on the scene immediately shifted their attention to Feng Tianwu, making her the spotlight of the crowd now. Just now, when Feng Tianwu had heard the words of the group of young female disciples, her face was already burning slightly, but now, being the center of attention of so many people, despite maintaining a calm expression as best as possible, her heart was in a turmoil. All that she could think about now was that she was like a lone boat in great billowing waves, in the midst of being turned over anytime soon. Sect Leader is really lucky. Be it this Mrs. Sect Leader or the 2 fiancés of his, all of them are women with unrivaled beauty. Exactly, Sect Leader really lucked out in his love life. If I could be like the sect leader, I'd never had any regrets at all in my life. Soon, many male disciples looked at Duan Lingtian again with an envious expression. Right now, I've fulfilled my promise towards you all, and you also have a new cultivation place now. After Duan Lingtian swept a glance at the group of male elders and disciples, he looked towards at the group of female elders and disciples before narrowing his eyes without warning. Listen, Ling Tian sect disciples. After Duan Ling Tian's sentence just now that seemed to be hanging halfway had successfully attracted the attention of everyone present, he opened his mouth once again as he bellowed loudly. For once, everyone who had their attention on Duan Ling Tian suddenly had their hearts tighten inexplicably as they became alert in an instant. From today onwards, Luo Ping, Yu Ping, and Yuan will become the vice sect leaders for the Ling Tian sect. The three of them will handle all the usual big and small general affairs of the sect. All of you must listen to their orders. Duan Ling Tian announced in a loud voice. Yes, the disciples of Ling Tian sect responded respectfully at once. Thank you for your high regard, sect leader. The moment Luo Ping, Yu Ping and Yuan heard this, their eyes lit up right away, and they quickly bowed down towards Duan Ling Tian in gratitude. Luo Ping, Yu Ping, Yuan, from now on, the three of you will be responsible to spread the news out to the public that the Yin Yang sect has been replaced by Ling Tian sect and already has a new sect master. Spread my name as the sect leader out as well. Duan Ling Tian looked at Luo Ping and the two others before he ordered. Yes, Luo Ping and the two responded respectfully. On top of that, within the next few days, send out disciples who can recognize Ka and Li Fei and search for their tracks, Duan Ling Tian ordered again. Whichever disciple can trace their tracks will be rewarded with a grade 1 spirit weapon that has a boost of 90% and a bottle of grade 1 life recovery pill that has a purity of 90% and above. After Duan Ling Tian issued his order, he told them the handsome reward. For a moment, the entire scene went dead silent. Grade 1 spirit weapon. Grade 1 life recovery pill. To the ordinary elders and disciples in Ling Tian sect, there was no doubt that these two items were extremely valuable. Only the high officials of the sect such as Luo Ping, Yu Ping, and Yuan did not lack these. However, they were also limited to ordinary grade 1 spirit weapons and grade 1 life recovery pills. Did I hear it correctly? Did the sect leader really mention a grade 1 spirit weapon that can give a 90% boost in strength? Eventually, someone seemed to return to his senses as he asked in a slightly awestruck manner. Chapter 1159-1160 Yang Chun. Don't forget the grade 1 life recovery pill that has a purity of 90% too. Somebody added on. Now that somebody had voiced out their doubts, streaks of gazes landed on Duan Ling Tian once again as though they wanted to confirm that they heard it correctly just now. Facing with these doubtful gazes, Duan Ling Tian reaffirmed confidently, you heard me correctly. It's really a grade 1 spirit weapon that can give a strength boost of 90% and a grade 1 life recovery pill that has a purity of 90% and above. Clamor. A stone that set off 1,000 ripples. The entire scene burst into an uproar. Is it truly a grade 1 spirit weapon that can give a strength boost of 90%? And a grade 1 life recovery pill that has a purity of 90% and above? Hello, didn't you hear the sect leader reaffirm it already just now? Or are you still trying to doubt the sect leader's word? I know, it's just that, is this even possible? I've never heard of anyone who could refine a grade 1 spirit weapon that can give a strength boost of 90% before. I've also never heard of anyone who can make a grade 1 life recovery pill that has a purity of 90% and above. 3 days ago, when the sect leader said that he was going to set up a large-scale inscription formation that would envelop the mountain wall of the northern side of the Ling Tian peak, did you believe him that time? No, and in the end, what was the result? I believe in sect leader. Not only that, but I also happen to know Junior's sister Ka and Li Fei. This time, I'll have the opportunity to go look for them. The group of Ling Tian disciples was discussing among one another. The doubts that they had towards Duan Ling Tian started to dissipate gradually as well. All of this was because Duan Ling Tian had fulfilled his promise today. He had really created an inscription formation that could withstand the northern chill wind that enveloped the entire mountain walls of the Ling Tian peak's north side. From what they could see, this young sect leader of their Ling Tian sect could not be judged by conventional thinking. However, all jokes aside, if the sect leader really takes out a grade 1 spirit weapon that can give a 90% boost and a grade 1 life recovery pill with a purity of 90% and above, does it mean that he knows a grade 1 weapons craftsman and alchemist as well? Not only that, they must be no ordinary grade 1 weapons craftsman and alchemist. Of course, do you even need to mention it? Do you think the people who can refine such a spirit weapon and a life recovery pill would be just some ordinary grade 1 weapons craftsman and alchemist? Such a weapons craftsman and alchemist must be very almighty and arrogant. However, the fact that they are willing to craft out such extraordinary grade 1 spirit weapons and grade 1 pills means that they must have quite a good relationship with the sect leader. The gaze that came from the Ling Tian sect disciples towards Duan Ling Tian was now burning with greater intensity. In fact, although there were also grade 1 spirit weapons and pills in the Yin Yang sect the last time, they were all obtained by begging from the outside or bid from auctions. This was because the former Yin Yang sect did not have any relationship with any grade 1 weapons craftsman and alchemist. Even if they could find one and ask them to help refine a spirit weapon or a pill, they would have to pay a hefty price. For this reason, the grade 1 spirit weapons and pills in the Yin Yang sect were far and few. Even an ordinary elder could not get their hands on them as well, let alone the lower disciples. Right now, the Yin Yang sect no longer existed and the Ling Tian sect had already replaced it. Not only that, this young sect leader of the Ling Tian sect seemed to have quite a close relationship with a grade 1 weapons craftsman and alchemist. In the future, perhaps they could even be given these grade 1 spirit weapons and pills as well. Why would they not be happy about this? What? Don't tell me that there are no grade 1 weapons craftsman and alchemist at all in our Ling Tian sect. Slightly frowning, Duan Ling Tian asked. It had never crossed his mind that just a mere grade 1 weapons craftsman and alchemist could make the group of Ling Tian sect elders and disciples lose their cool. For a moment, as the sect leader, he could not help but feel heat creeping up his face, slightly embarrassed about this matter. Sect leader, we Ling Tian sect really don't have any grade 1 weapons craftsman and alchemist at all. Luo Ping smiled wryly. Though the Yin Yang sect was a first-rate force in the inner land, it was only a first-rate force by the border of the inner land. Its rank could be deemed as the bottom compared to the many first-rate forces in the inner land. Very few grade 1 weapons craftsmen and alchemists would come to join such a force. Looks like it's time for me to bait some grade 1 weapons craftsmen and alchemists to join us then, Duan Ling Tian muttered. Though he was muttering to himself, he was not very soft. His muttering had entered the ears of the crowds who had gone silent clearly. Bait. For a second, the corners of everyone's mouth, including Luo Ping, Yu Ping, and Yuan, other than Feng Tianwu, Shang Quan, and Gold Thug, twitched a little. However, they only thought that Duan Ling Tian had just casually thrown out a remark. They never expected it to be real. HMPH. My master always walks the talk. You guys still don't believe him? Looking at the doubtful expression that this group of people in front had on their faces, the Gold Thug snorted in slight annoyance. Long before when they had just left the berserk mongrel rodent clan, he had learned a lot of information about his master from Shang Quan. He realized that the more he knew about his master, the more dumbfounded he was. Not only did his master have jaw-dropping martial strength, but he was also an inscription master too. Other than being an inscription master, he was also a grade 1 weapons craftsman and alchemist. Even if he was a hell golden hound who had a strong heart, the moment he learned about all of these, he still had quite the shock of his life. That time, he had also fully confirmed a fact. His master was human and not a demon like him. In the face of the Gold Thug's query, everyone in the Ling Tian sect, including the 3 vice-sect leaders of the Ling Tian sect, could not come up with any answer at all for a moment. Gold Thug, why are you so enraged? These people will only learn after they have experienced it. By the time I've baited these people to show up in front of them, they will come to believe it naturally already. In the face of the Gold Thug's wrath, Duan Ling Tian was very calm. He was not unhappy at all, facing the doubts of the Yin Yang sect members. We're sorry, sect leader. It's not that we doubt your words, but it's just that the things that you said just now were just too unbelievable. Luo Ping lowered her head and bowed down to Duan Ling Tian as she apologized respectfully. We're sorry, sect leader. All of the Ling Tian sect elders and disciples, including the Yu brothers, lowered their heads and bowed down at once. They had just only realized that they had offended the prestige of their sect leader earlier. Duan Ling Tian stole a calm glance at the crowds in front before saying nonchalantly, compared to empty words, I prefer to use the truth to shut your mouths up and give you a good slap. After he had finished saying this, he motioned to Feng Tianwu, Shang Quan, and Gold Thug and left straight away. Let's go. For a moment, it was only Luo Ping, the Yu brothers, and the group of Ling Tian peak elders and disciples who were left behind. Looking at Duan Ling Tian and the other 3 leaving, many of the Ling Tian disciples started to break into an uproar again. Honestly, I still don't really believe the sect leader's words. I don't believe him too. How could you just easily bait a grade 1 weapons craftsman and alchemist to join us? In my opinion, even the Grade 1 weapons craftsman and alchemist who can help the sect leader refine the Grade 1 spirit weapons and pills might not be able to come here to Ling Tian sect. Of course, such an extraordinary Grade 1 weapons craftsman and alchemist would have long gone to the ancient clan or placed themselves under the protection of a martial emperor if they wanted to. Many people still felt doubtful towards what Duan Ling Tian had said just now and thought that he was bragging. I have a feeling that it might not be that case. I keep feeling like the sect leader doesn't seem to be bragging at all. 3 days ago, I also thought that the sect leader was merely bluffing us by saying some empty words, but today, the truth has proven me very wrong. I also think that the sect leader isn't lying to us. After all, just this large-scale inscription formation alone is enough to prove that the sect leader is somebody who walks the talk. Of course, there was still a small group of people who believed in Duan Ling Tian. No matter what, be it the people who believed in Duan Ling Tian or those who did not, all of them were looking forward and yearned for the future awaiting the Ling Tian sect. 3 vice sect leaders, I know junior sister Ka and Li Fei. Please assign me to look for them. I know them too. Me too. Very soon, many female disciples looked at Luo Ping and the other 2 and requested to be assigned in a hurry. After all, those who managed to find the 2 fiancés of the sect leader would be able to get their hands on the handsome rewards. Just thinking of the Grade 1 spirit weapon that could give a boost of 90% and the Grade 1 life recovery pill that had a purity of 90% and above could give a rush of a thrill to them. Even though some of them did not believe that Duan Ling Tian would be able to bait a Grade 1 weapons craftsman and alchemist to come to join the Ling Tian sect, they still believed his promise of the rewards. For this reason, they were itching with eagerness to get their hands on them. Just as many of the Ling Tian sect disciples left Ling Tian Peak, an old man was hurrying in his journey very far away on the northeast side. That old man was none other than Yun Gang, who had just left Ling Tian Peak 3 days ago. He was also the guardian elder of Yang Peak of the former Yin Yang sect. Duan Ling Tian is now taking over that sad leftover mess of the Yin Yang sect. Not only that, he needs to find those 2 girls with the help of the Yin Yang sect, so I think he won't be leaving the sect behind for quite some time. Yun Gang's eyes shone with brilliance. For this reason, it'll be easier for Sir Yang Chun to avenge his brother. Sir Yang Chun. The moment he mentioned this name, Yun Gang was filled with a sense of admiration and respect flashed in his eyes. In his eyes, Yang Chun was a powerhouse who was utterly unparalleled. Not only that, if Yang Chun wanted to kill him, he would be able to do that in just a blink of an eye because he was a 9th-level martial monarch, a powerhouse not any ordinary 9th-level martial monarch could be compared to. Not only that, but he had also another shocking identity: he was the disciple of a martial emperor. What was most important was that Yang Chun was Yang Hong's elder brother by blood. Even though Peak Master usually doesn't get along well with his brother, Yang Chun, I'm sure Yang Chun won't just stand by idly watching after knowing that he was killed. They were a family after all. Yun Gang's eyes shone with great brilliance. This time, if Yang Chun can help avenge his brother, then it would mean that he owes me a huge debt of gratitude. After all, if it hadn't been for me who suggested to Duan Ling Tian for him to stay behind, he would have long gone away to only God knows where and not stay behind.